Good afternoon, Mayor. You're now live.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. Now we're going to start our work session of Las Cruces City Council. Today is Monday, April 26, 2021. It's approximately 3:16 p.m. We're going to start off with our pet of the week, or pets of the week. And I believe Vanessa Chastain will be presenting. Maybe not. Let's see her. Okay, how about is Clint Thacker there? No Clint. Okay, well, we'll just go ahead and go to the jobs of the week, and then we'll circle back to pets of the week. So, let's see, Darlene or Cindy?
Mr. Mayor, this is Francisco Payares. I'll be doing the jobs of the week.
Oh, okay.
Ms. Arlene Lopez and Ms. Cindy Quilling needed to be somewhere else for their meeting. And for this week's jobs of the week, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council and members of the public, we have for the City of Las Cruces, we're hiring for a museum administrator. That's for the City of Las Cruces, and that position closes on May 17th of 2021. We are also looking, the New Mexico Workforce Connections, as part of their hot jobs, is looking for the EMT basic. That's with American Medical Response. That one closes on July the 5th of 2021. Southeast Electric is also looking for an administrative assistant, Southeast Electric Incorporated, and that position closes on May the 5th that's May the 7th, my apologies, May the 7th. Attendance also with the Environmental Department, with the Environmental Services Department with Memorial Medical Center. They have 3 positions available, and those are open until they're filled. There's also a respiratory therapist, oxygen therapy associate, and that one closes on July the 4th. Also, one additional thing that is important to point out is that New Mexico Workforce Connections, along with with New Mexico State University, they're carrying a Restart New Mexico job fair on May the 4th. So for those employers or for those job seekers that are looking to find an online job fair, you may register in the employeenm.com webpage, and actually you can just Google it like that, right, with the employeenm.com webpage or along some of the news that they have. And it's going to be on May the 4th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So if you're looking to post one of your jobs now that the economy has slowly been reopening, or you're looking to hire someone else, and maybe in your additional operations, or maybe you're looking for a job, you can go and seek in that Restart New Mexico, register for that job fair. For a full list of jobs, internships, and volunteer opportunities, please visit www.employeenm.com and also www.governmentjobs.com/careers/Las Cruces. Then the Office for New Mexico Workforce Connections is located on Alameda Boulevard, 226. The phone number is 575-524-6250. And again, the webpage is www.employeenm.com. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Dr. Payares. Appreciate that. And so now I still didn't see Vanessa. Vanessa, are you there? Okay, so we'll go ahead and go to the COVID-19 update. And that's by Assistant City Manager Eric Enriquez, who's going to present. ACM Enriquez, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Eric Enriquez, Assistant City Manager, to give you a COVID-19 update. Doña Ana County is still currently in the yellow. And we keep hearing the governor is looking at changing the criteria. We were hoping that happened last week. We'll anticipate some kind of changes to help us with the criteria so we can get to the green and maybe even the turquoise sooner than later. On the DOH, Department of Health dashboard, fully vaccinated in Doña Ana County is 64,000. That's approximately 37%. Individuals with single doses is 52.1%. Registration for the vaccine in Doña Ana County is about 58%. The Johnson & Johnson under CDC has recommended to resume the vaccine for those 18 years of age and older. There's still some concern with women that are younger than 50 years old to be aware of the risk, especially with blood clotting. Doña Ana County and Department of Health will use that vaccine mostly for our homebound population. That would only require one trip going out to their home as opposed to going on 2 trips. So we'll be using it on that if the client is willing to take the Johnson & Johnson. There has been a lull in the vaccinations. In Vado last week, they had 300 doses, only 170 showed up. So we are seeing more and more no-shows. And there are some concerns with expiration dates now of the vaccine. Today, there was 200 that were available, and it was a use it or lose it within a 2 to 3 hour period. So the Department of Health set up a pod site locally to try to get those, first come, first served basis. One of the things that the Department of Health is doing to combat that is now, it was age 40 and over. Now it's 16 and over. Anyone over the age of 16 can now schedule their own vaccines, and we're hoping that'll be a way to get more of the vaccinations done in our community. Also with that, the Las Cruces Public School District is going to have a pod site at Las Cruces High School on Wednesday, and they have 500 doses available for that campaign to start getting students vaccinated in the high school age group. The Asylum refugees update, there's no concern at this time. The federal government and the non-government agencies such as Enunciation and El Paso have really stepped up and doing a good job with that. So at this time, we don't see a concern of having to set up a shelter in our area. And that's all I had, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Assistant Manager Enriquez. Appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
And just information that I'm aware of on the Johnson & Johnson, there was six individuals or so out of 6 million. So they say that's about a 1 in 1 million chance of the blood clots. So the benefits far outweigh the risk. Councilor Flores?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question for Mr. Enriquez. So Eric, thank you for your presentation. We're not anticipating any migrant groups, any children, for example, or anything like that?
No, not at this time. A lot of the unattended children have been sent to Dallas and the Midland area, and that's where I said that the federal government has really stepped up to help in those cases. There was talk a few weeks ago of a location in New Mexico, but that got canceled just because the place is already set up in the Dallas area.
Okay, and the reason I'm asking is, and perhaps Mayor Pro Tem Gandara has information, but I did see Jolene, your bestie, your comadre Martinez. She's at FYI. And she was saying that they were getting ready to, they were preparing for the arrival of some children, but we didn't, we were in a setting where I didn't have the opportunity, but she did say migrant children. And I said, oh, that's odd, because we were told that there wasn't going to be any, we weren't going to have that, but that's what she's with FYI. So I just wondered if you knew anything about that, Mayor Pro Tem, or if you, Eric, have heard, and if that has anything to do with us being prepared.
Mayor, if I may?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilor Flores and Eric. Yeah, those are the same type of information that I'm getting from her, from CYFD, so colleagues that have, folks that are working in different agencies across the state, and all that information I've sent back to EFO for him, to investigate, talk with Eric, and at this point, because we're getting such difference, right? Different information. frankly. And so I just know there are folks locally that are gearing up because they say they're going to receive. When exactly, not sure. But all accounts have pointed that we're not getting any. And then I have a connection that I sent. I've received a email from a gentleman that's working at Fort Bliss, and so I connected Ifo and Eric to them as well. So, they're housing them and working through that process, and it didn't seem like we were getting any children, unaccompanied minors, or families at that point either. And that's been maybe 3 weeks now, Councilor Flores. So I'm just, when I get information, I forward it on, and I trust that Mr. Enriquez and Ifo are, working through those channels and getting the correct information. And thus far, we haven't received any.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Gandara and Councilor Flores. That is correct. Anytime that we get any kind of information or knowledge, I reach out to all the contacts I have from the state, the Border Patrol, the local churches that are helping with these refugees as well. El Calvario here, that is their mission. They are involved, but at this point, as a city or as a community, we don't have a concern at this point. As soon as something like that happens, we'll be sure to let you know. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Bencomo?
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to note that it's because Title 42, the provision of Title 42 is still in place, that there is a very small number of asylum seekers being allowed into the country. Title 42 is set to expire May 20th, although the Biden administration has not indicated that committed to that, so that might not happen. But if Title 42 is revoked, then we most likely will see an increase of families arriving.
Okay, thank you for that information.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it, Eric? You're finished with your presentation?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we have 2 items on the agenda. First one is item 4.1, a Paso Electric $20 million Economic Development Fund. So as you all know, Paso Electric was sold. I guess it was finalized a while back, and part of that is Paso Electric had inserted in there that they were going to give $20 million, I think $1 million a year for 20 years for economic development. And so with us today is Las Cruces businessman, Mr. John Hummer. John, I'm sorry it's taken so long. You probably could have gone to El Paso and back, maybe even grab lunch and still be in time for our meetings. So, anyways, floor is yours. Just need you to state your name and your position, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, my name is John Hummer, and my role here today is I am one of 3 members on the fund advisors who were nominated and selected to serve in the role of fund advisor, which I'll explain in a moment. In addition to myself, Ed Camden, who is the CEO of Calstrip Industries, serves as fund advisor, and also Jareen Hutchinson. They were not able to be here today, so I am going to present on behalf of all 3 of us, and I'll be very brief because I know you have a long agenda. The one thing I'll just say before I start is I want to compliment you. I listened to the whole TID session. It brought me back to when I served on the DLCP board and served as chair of that organization. And several of you did mention accurately that it's been a long time coming, the Incubator. That was something that was, supposed to happen a while back, and it's great to see that it's moving forward. And that's really exciting because there's just a lot of potential, a lot of opportunity with that, as each of you pointed out in your comments. So congratulations on that. Can't wait to see that happen. You all know about the fund. It's very straightforward. It's $1 million a year for 20 years. When we met as a group and with El Paso Electric, one of the things we did, we put the criteria together, and we had a deadline of April 1st for the applications, for the first round of applications. What we felt was important when we defined criteria was to really focus it on economic-based jobs, E-based economic development, which there's a lot of different perspectives on this, but if I can just kind of give my perspective that I think is shared by a lot of economic development professionals, is that when you talk about E-based jobs, the difference between that versus, say, retail jobs is that your goods or your services are being sold to consumers outside of our county. So we're generating income from either goods that are being produced and manufactured or services that are being provided, and the consumers of that are from outside the area, bringing in new wealth, new opportunity, and then allowing those jobs to grow as a result of that economic-based development. And so we put that criteria out, which is very similar, right? You all are familiar with MAVITA and how MAVITA works, how they look at economic-based development as well. So it really aligns with that philosophy. And to date, after the deadline, we had 16 applications. And I will just say that of those applications, we did have individuals that submitted in projects that were more retail-based, not E-based. There were some social service projects that were submitted, which is all fine. They're all good projects, but they don't really fit the criteria on that aspect. We're not going to announce who the recipients are until after we have our first public meeting, which we're going to have on May 10th at 10 a.m. It's been posted through the Community Foundation of Southern New Mexico, who is the fiscal agent for the fund. And we'll have a public meeting. We will go through what applications we received. We will have a Q&A with any of the applicants themselves, to the public at large that may have questions as well. And then after May 10th, the announcement will be made for the first deployment of the $1 million. And our goal is for all $1 million to be deployed. One of the things, some foreshadowing, obviously MAVITA is an applicant, and I think that they are a strong applicant. And one of the things that we were in discussion with MAVITA, and we had a pre-meeting before today, last month, with EFO, our city manager, and we talked about, the potential of this fund, because I think everybody would agree that this is a very positive, development for our community, for our county, for our city. And what we felt was important was to have a courtesy presentation to you all to kind of share with you our philosophy, meaning the fund advisor's philosophy, and EFO had recommended and thought it was a good idea for us to brief you as well on this. But one of the aspects that we're looking at with MAVITA is the concept of a closing fund, and a stackable closing fund that can be stacked, multi-year award. And we know the incentives that New Mexico has, which I think are good. Some states have some incentives that are better than ours, but we have some incentives that are better than other states when it comes to LEDA in particular, which I think is our strongest, incentive as a state. Of course, JTIP is a good program too. But one of the things that we can build as a community, and I think MAVITA is putting this forward as the concept, is the concept of building a closing fund that can be used for things that you, the city, really can't do because of anti-donation for, say, infrastructure. Say a company wants to come in, but they need some funds for some infrastructure, so on and so forth. And that closing fund can be built. And that really, I think, strengthens the collaboration between MAVITA and the city and the county as well, to have access to those type of funds. And obviously it needs to be proven, these type of funds, that you just don't write a check and hope they come. They've got to demonstrate that they've hired jobs, that they've made an investment and they're here, and then it can be back funded on that as well. So I just wanted to give you a foreshadowing that there are some creative discussions going on to do some things that we've not really been able to do as a community and as a state, with some closing fund incentives as well. So with that, I just want to stop and answer any questions, because again, I wanted to make it brief, and this is a courtesy to let you know kind of our thinking, our philosophy on this, and to answer any questions that you have.
Thanks, Sean. When you say closing fund, you mean like close the deal fund? So,
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm sorry. Thanks.
That's okay. Yeah, no problem. And then also, and I'm waiting for council if they have any questions. I'm also, is it is it broken down into city and county, or is it just all either or? You know, like 500,000 city, 500,000 county, or is it just whatever is you all feel is best?
Yeah, I think, let's assume, let's say that an award goes to an organization that manages the closing fund. We really don't want to get into the details of city, county. Let's say a closing fund is awarded to Mavita and they manage that, which the city and the county, you have a seat at the table with Mavita. They'll come up with the criteria on that. We're not going to come up with it. X percent has to be county, X percent has to be city. I think what's most important is good projects that are vetted and can contribute to the economy and the growth of our county is what's most important. That's my personal feeling, and the money will follow good ideas.
Okay. Looks like we have a question from Councilor Vasquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Hummer, for your presentation and representing this initiative today. Yeah, I'm wondering, first of all, I'll just start by saying I know El Paso Electric, under this new leadership and restructure that they recently did, has changed a lot of their philanthropic and community giving programs and opportunities. And so grateful that they are thinking about investing this money in our community as a fund to generate economic development opportunity. I just want to say that first. Second, in terms of this model, I haven't seen this model before, especially from a utility company. And so I'm wondering, Mr. Hummer, if this was based, as far as you know, off of other models that have worked in other communities. Do other utilities typically do this? How have you seen perhaps maybe similar companies use a program like this to spur economic development in other places, just to see kind of where we are in terms of the precedent of El Paso Electric organizing a program like this in our community?
I do not have knowledge of any others. This is the first of its kind that I'm aware of, and let me couch that by saying that my role really wasn't involved in the creation or the where and the wherefore of it, other than I read about it the same time probably everybody else read that wasn't involved in the creation of it, and then I got a phone call and said, we want to nominate you to be a fund advisor. Would you be interested in that? And I said I would be interested. So really, I had no reason to do any research as to if it's been done elsewhere before. But I think I'm glad it's being done here, because I think it's better than not having the money. So.
Thank you, Mr. Hummer. I appreciate that. And I haven't seen it. I haven't seen this model either. So I'm just curious to see if this was, something that other utilities had done in communities where this, had produced similar or the types of results that we're looking for. What is, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but what would an ideal situation be like for the use of this fund? What kind of hypothetical situation would you see this fund being used for in the city of Las Cruces that you would say, man, this is why I signed up to do this, and it's successful, and we would call this a success?
So just from my perspective, and I've been here now going on 22 years, so I'm just coming from my perspective and experience since I've been in the state. If I was to wave a magic wand, I think the ideal situation would be an NMSU graduate that has a business idea, that was able to raise capital and to create a business opportunity in our community, and to create a product, grow it, hire hundreds and hundreds of people locally. That would be the ideal. Second to that would be a company coming in from outside that would be an influx of new jobs, be it manufacturing, be it high tech, be it any other type of economic based job creator to come in and to stay here long term. But if you ask me the question, what would be the ideal, it would be that first scenario.
Thank you, Mr. Hull. I agree with that for sure. What if it's a community solar company?
If they manufacture panels here and they sell them out, absolutely, yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm not opposed to, I've got, on a side note, full disclosure, my wife and I, we own Steinmore Real Estate. If you ever look at the Google Earth, that entire plaza is full of solar panels. We put in solar panels 7 years ago. So,
No, I appreciate that. I think certainly, again, appreciate the investment on the part of El Paso Electric for this closing fund, and interested to see how it would work, especially in conjunction with tools that we have in place, like LIDA, and certainly some of the work that Navita and others are doing in this space. Whenever you can leverage dollars from community partners, as well as local and state government, federal government, to bring forth projects that are beneficial to our community, I'm all for it. So I'm excited to learn more about how this fund would be used, and see the evolution of where it goes. And thankful for you and El Paso Electric for contributing this to our community. So thank you.
Able to receive funding based on the quality of their project as well. So it doesn't mean that if they don't get it directly from the grant, they can still go to the economic development organizations who may be receiving funding to also receive that funding as well.
Okay, great. Well, very good. Well, again, thank you very much for sharing this information with us, and as well as bringing us this news. And so with that, I think you're good. I mean, go back to wherever it is you were doing. So,
all right. Thanks.
Okay, thanks again.
Thanks for everything you all do. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and move to item 4.2, the fiscal year 21-2022 proposed budget and CIP, being presented by Leanne Demouche and David Cedillo. So who's going to start first? Probably Leanne.
Is going to be me, Mayor. Let me, as you know, I'm not real good at this. I'm getting better. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, let me see if I can make it full. Can we see it full?
Yeah, pretty good.
Good. Okay. Let me do one more thing, Mayor. Excuse me. Okay. I'm going to move you guys over here. Great. Okay. So, Mayor, it is that time of the year, Mayor and Council. We have David Cedillo and our staff have met with you on multiple times. It is per our charter, just to let you know, that at least 60 days, and I apologize with the allergies, I have a little bit of a frog in my throat today. 60 days prior to the start of the new fiscal year, the city manager shall submit a budget and a budget message to the council for the next fiscal year. And that's what we're fulfilling today, is what is in our charter. Okay, so this is our budget book cover. I hope you like it. It was developed by Carla Walton. Our theme, if it looks familiar, is Together We Can, which is what the theme we had for what Carla put together with communications, Together We Can. I'd also like, during this time, Mayor and Council, is to just introduce a little bit of the team that we have. Of course, my budget team, I could not do this job without them. Of course, it's Matt Sines, Will Blanchard, and Sherelle Dela Cruz. We do have a team for this presentation. It's not just me up here giving this all to you. We have our economist, Kyle Eager, who I'll be passing off to him. After that, we have our IT director, Scott Marr, who is going to be introducing a new plan or program to you. And then, of course, turning it over to David Cedillo, who is our public works director. Also would like to give a shout out to, of course, Carla, who designed our beautiful cover, Sarah Cundiff, who works on the CIP for Public Works, and of course, our Deputy Director, Mr. Tony Trevino. So our proposed budget summary, conservative budget, especially due to the COVID-19 recession. We are not asking for any increases in property taxes or GRT. We did take in your council considerations, and myself and Mr. David Cedillo will be going over those with you in this presentation. And that was part of the direction at the last work session that we had with you. And of course, Elevate Las Cruces and your new strategic plan initiative that was adopted by council as well. So our budget development this year, per our city management guidelines, we did budget a salary and benefit increase of 2.5%. It is in our budget. And any union negotiation contracts that we had, we took that into consideration as well. Some of them are either higher or lower than the 2.5%, so we took all of those into consideration. We are asking for 3 new positions, and they're not actually new. What it is Parks and Rec asked for 6 of their part-time after-school employees to become full-time. So they're already budgeted at 50%. So actually, if you take 6 and you divide it by 2, you get 3 new positions. So actually just 6 people are becoming full-time. Reclasses, city management said reclasses only if the increase is less than 10%. So we took all of that into consideration. We are doing a open salary savings. Actually, this would be our 3rd year, my 3rd year of the budget as well, that we've had open salary savings. This year, we put an open salary savings of $5 million. And then in operating, of course, all of the departments reviewed their budgets to meet their performance, strategic results. Of course, Elevate was always on our mind the whole time in our new strategic plan. A little bit of the budget highlights using the new strategic plan. You'll notice I'm using the themes, the first one being community prosperity. We did put some budget towards the Certified Site Program, which is updating the Las Cruces Innovation and Industrial Park Master Plan and the overlay zone to stimulate business in that area. The Downtown Business Incubator, which you discussed with the TID earlier. As I think Chris had mentioned to you, he did budget some operational funds, some startup funds to help develop additional business activity in the downtown. Then there's funding for Main Street Grant Program to develop additional business activity in the downtown area as well. And then the El Paseo and Solano corridor for a metropolitan redevelopment area plan. Next theme is education and community services. We anticipate the last quarter of fiscal year 22 to open our new community pool. So we budgeted that under, for 1 quarter. It includes new positions. It includes some operating expenses, supplies, purchase services, general things like that. Environmental sustainability, we increase infrastructure and purchases of EV vehicles. So we are looking at, for fiscal year 22, hopefully purchasing some electric vehicles, which has been discussed, as you know, in the last couple of work sessions and resolutions that went to council recently. Capital improvements and infrastructure. We have talked about the pavement condition index, which when we get into the council priorities, we'll talk a little bit more of what we budgeted for the PCI. And then under communication, involvement, and follow-up, this year we have budgeted the Main Street, or maybe it's not necessarily Main Street, but the extension of the Main Street public Wi-Fi. And this year for FY22, there should be on our website a dashboard for performance and performance-based budgeting. We're using OpenGov, and we hope to get that up and going for FY22. And then, of course, under public safety, which is part of the council priorities that we've been discussing, we did budget for the mobile integrated health program. So at this point, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Mr. Kyle Eager, who is our economist.
All right, thank you, Leanne. Yeah, this is Kyle Eager. I'm the economist for the Las Cruces Economic Development Department. I'll be providing a brief snapshot of the current economic conditions in the city of Las Cruces. I'll be focusing particularly on labor market conditions within the city. So we'll first look at general employment conditions. This graph shows long-run trends in employment growth for the city of Las Cruces. This data comes from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, local area employment statistics. So these numbers are based on household surveys of people residing within the city limits. So prior to the COVID-19 crisis, the city had experienced steady employment growth since 2010. Starting in March of 2020, we observed a sharp decline in employment. However, since July, there's been a recovery in terms of total employment for the city. So as of February 2021, our best preliminary estimates that we get from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they suggest that total employment within the city was 44,302, which is about 1,338 jobs less than total employment in February of 2020, or that's about 3% less. Again, most recent observations are preliminary estimates, and they're subject to change. They're subject to change by the Bureau of Labor Statistics as time goes on. So although we are 1,300 jobs away from where we were in February 2020, I should note that we need to consider population growth during this time. We still have a ways to go to get back to where we were, prior to where we were if there had been no COVID. And of course, that number is difficult to calculate. However, when you take into account population growth, we're actually more like 2,000 jobs away from where we need to be, or we're about 4,000 jobs less than where we need to be. So as you probably noticed that there's considerable seasonality in this employment data, where there's often a 1,000 job difference between November and January. And because of that, it can make kind of distinguishing the month-to-month fluctuations from the long-run trend difficult. And because of that, it's useful to look at year-over-year employment statistics. So next slide, please. Okay, thank you. So this graph shows monthly employment for 2019, 2020, and our preliminary estimates for 2021. So this is the same data as before, it's just presented in a different manner. So if you compare year 2019 with 2020, you'll notice that at the start of 2020, we were doing better than we had done in 2019. And then you see the effect of the COVID shutdowns, but then a recovery that begins in August. And then we, of course, have our 2021 preliminary numbers on total employment for the city. Given that, we are seeing a rise in employment, there are reasons to be cautiously optimistic. Next slide, please. So a common question is what industries have been hurt the most by the COVID-19 shutdowns? And we have data on that. Unfortunately, it comes out with a considerable lag, with the Q3 2020 being the most recent data available. So Q4 data should be coming out later this week. Although this information is a bit dated, it still has value in telling us what industries have been impacted the most. I should note that whereas the previous data in the previous two graphs came from household surveys, this data comes from surveys of businesses. So it comes from the quarterly census of employment and wages. So they use information from payroll data to get these estimates. So total employment won't match. The reason being that more people work in the city than live in the city. So looking at this data, we see that the largest declines in employment have been concentrated in the retail trade sector, as well as the accommodations and food services sector. We also observe a large decline in employment in administrative and support services, about an 800 job decrease. So I have looked into that particular sector, and most of that employment loss is due to a decline in call center employment. However, doing some follow-up research on that decline in call center employment, it is not something that's unique to Las Cruces. So if you look at data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, since 2017, if you look at total employment in that sector for the whole entire United States, beginning around the second quarter of 2017, the United States has been experiencing a decline in call center employment. And a lot of it is because they are offshoring a lot of call centers. So that's a snapshot of the Las Cruces economy, and I'll turn things back over to Leanne.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kyle. So Mayor, Council, we're going to jump right into the budget. This is our all funds expenditured. So this is our total citywide budget. As you can see, we're at close to $500 million, $497.8 million. As you can see, the general fund and the special revenue, there's a big jump in the expenditures for the general fund, which I will actually get into a little bit more detail in some slides when we talk about the general fund. But overall, we have a 20% increase. There is, as you can see, $115.1 million for the general fund. Other operating funds, these are funds that are like these are all funds that start with the one. They're still considered general funds. For example, there's economic development, the vehicle acquisition fund, facilities, and the hold harmless GRT. These are all in the other operating funds. Our special revenue funds, these are funds that start with the twos. And by the way, in your book or in the attached document, this starts on page 8, which is our recapitulation. You can actually see the different funds. This goes from page 8 to page 11 in your book. These funds are funds that are restricted or they're dedicated to a special project. And typically these are funds that are tied to either a state statute or an ordinance or to a resolution. An example of that is the gas tax. The TID that we just talked about, that's considered a special revenue because it's tied to a state ordinance and also a city ordinance. The Telsure Fund, the street maintenance and flood control, all of those are special revenue because they're tied to either a resolution or an ordinance or a state statute. And then you have the debt service funds. And of course, these are funds that are used to pay principal and interest on debt that the city has. Our capital project funds, as you can see, there's an increase of 40%. Most of the reason for this increase is actually, the majority of this is carryovers. And if you'll remember, in fiscal year 21, we went out for our second phase of funding for the GO bonds. And it was a rather larger chunk of the GO bonds. And as you know, all of those projects are ongoing. We also did our recycling of our bonds, and so we have a lot of capital projects that are ongoing right now, and so that makes up why there's an increase of 40%. And the majority of these is not necessarily we're asking for more capital funds. What it is most of these are all carryovers from the previous years of capital projects. Then in the enterprise, you see another jump in the enterprise. And the enterprise funds, those are the funds that start with a 5. And those funds are typically utilities, the airport, and transit are enterprise funds. As you know, the utility board takes their budget to their utility board, which they already have. They've had a special work session or a work session, and they have adopted a resolution to bring forward to council. And we have that. Part of the reason that you see an increase in these enterprises funds is not necessarily because of utilities, but because in this past year, if you will remember, the grants department and budget brought to you a couple of resolutions for transit. We brought to you the facility, the grant for the facility, which was $11 million grant that we bought. So we just recently in FY21 budgeted for that grant. And also we brought in the electric buses. And so we budgeted that in 21. So a lot of this increase in the enterprise fund is due to these capital projects, because those capital projects are within the 5 within that enterprise, just like utilities capital projects are also in the enterprise funds as well. And then of course we have our internal services, and our internal services are those particular funds that support our own internal operations. And that includes such as fleet services. We also have in there the health fund for our benefits. We have the liability claims in there, and also workers' comp. And then under trust and agency funds, these are all of the funds that start with 7 and 8. And this is typically our JPAs, MRVDA, Metro, Animal Service Center, South Central Solid Waste. And then we have a couple of accounts in there that we receive donations and trusts from. Very small amount for those. This is where our budget, this is just a different way of showing you where our budget is. I think sometimes graphically it's a lot easier to read. As you can see, the largest portion of our budget, citywide budget, of course, is our enterprise funds. Then next you have the general fund, capital funds, and followed by internal trust at 7%, special revenue and debt at 4%. So I'm going to jump into the general fund. The general fund, as you know, is the largest fund for the departments, for the city departments. As you can see from fiscal year 21, the current year that we're in, to fiscal year 22, there is a 19% increase. And as I mentioned, I will be going into a little bit more detail of why there is such a large jump, as you'll see. But it went from 97.0 million to 115.12. So general fund summary. So before I begin, and the mayor and Councilor Flores have already heard this a little bit. This has to do with recently we have the state passed House Bill 479. And I'm sure that's now sounding very familiar. And what House Bill 479 did was it de-earmarked certain municipal and county local options gross receipts tax. And so with the city, and I did not put, I did a presentation to the Finance Select Committee on Friday. And we talked about in depth about House Bill 479, but sort of giving you in the nutshell version. But what it did was any GRT that we have specifically dedicated to certain operations, the state has now undedicated them. And the city actually has several ordinances, and specifically, we have quite a few ordinances that we dedicated our GRT just to the general fund. We have quite a few of those. And then we have a couple of dedications to certain items, certain programs that we have. One of them being street improvements. We have another one for environmental services. This is our environmental gross receipts tax. We have one for police and fire department programs. And then we have another one for our hold harmless GRT. So what the state did was they de-dedicated or de-earmarked most of the GRTs that we have dedicated to. Those being specifically street improvements, the environmental gross receipts tax, and the hold harmless GRT. So now, since our hold harmless is not really an issue because it's already going into a general fund, but specifically this is for street improvements, which is $2,600, which is a special revenue. And then our other one is environmental gross receipts tax, which is in $2,800. So now, because of this de-earmarking for FY22, all of the revenue and all of the expenses now have to go into the general fund. Okay, so this is pretty much why you see this big jump, because they used to be in a special revenue that started with the 2, and now they are actually being brought in, the revenue and the expenses. And you can see there's a jump in the revenue as well. The revenue, the expenses, and the transfers are now in the general fund. So that's why you see this big expense. Overall, you can see that our ending balance went from 20 million to 21. And the reason that our reserve, you're probably wondering, why did our 2/12 reserve go up? Well, the reason for our 2/12 reserve increase is because our reserve is calculated on our expenses. Well, since our expenses went up 19%, our reserve now goes up 19%. So that is why you see now that we have an unreserved balance of 1.94 million. So I'm going to jump into a little bit of the, Mr. Peely wanted me to give you a little bit more input into why we have that increase other than just House Bill 479. It involves a couple of other things. The difference, of course, is the 18.1 million, as you can see here, with the increase of the 2.5% in the union contracts. You see an increase in salaries and benefits for FY22 of about 5.2 million. In our operating, we see some new operating expenses of about 1.7 million. And then two of the other changes, I should say, that for FY22, we made all kinds of changes this year, but two of them have to do with reclassing some transfers to an expense. And the reason we did these was that fleet services is an internal with the city. It should be set up as an internal, and it is just for, for basic operations to know what the true costs are for each of the departments. In the past, we had always considered fleet as what we call a chargeback. They perform a service for a department and they pretty much send them a bill, and then that department pays for it. And so a couple of years ago, I'm not privy to why this happened, but a couple of years ago, any of the departments that had fleet vehicles that were in the general fund, they made an automatic transfer instead of using the chargeback expense that I mentioned. So we're just writing this. It needs to be considered an expense. I've talked with accounting with our finance director. She agrees with me. This needs to be an expense to the departments and bringing in an income instead of a transfer in the general fund. The other item that we're reclassing in the transfers to an expense are the JPAs. And the reason for this is, as you know, every year the finance department puts together the comprehensive annual financial plan. And in this plan, the JPAs are considered a commitment. That's a good word to use. We are committed to give so many dollars to Animal Service Center, MRDA, and Metro. And so since they are considered an expense in our comprehensive financial report, so they need to be budgeted as so as well. And so working with finance as well, we have reclassed those transfers to an expense, which is what they should be. So that's about 4.3 million, as you can see. And then from the House Bill 479 that I just mentioned, you see about 3.4 million of expenses that are going to be coming out of the general fund for the funds that were in the special revenue. And so altogether, you can see why there's an increase of 18.1 million. Now, I also wanted to bring up the general fund transfers, because if you remember back on the previous slide, they seemed very comparable. And the reason being is and hopefully this is not, I tried to make this as transparent as possible, but for our fiscal year 21, as I just mentioned, fleet services is considered a transfer right now for this fiscal year. So we're reclassing that to an expense. So we're not going to have that transfer in FY22. And we're also doing the JPAs that way, just as I just mentioned. So we're not going to have that 4.3 million as a transfer. So we're getting rid of the 7.8. It's going to be an expense. But we do, now that 2,600 is now in the general fund due to House Bill 479, they do have some transfers out of the general fund for debt and for capital projects, and that's around 6.5 million. We did increase this year the transfer to the liability fund of $1 million. And then the other one, House Bill 479 was 2,800, which is our environmental gross receipts tax. And there is a transfer to 2780, which goes to the Griggs Walnut. And then we have a couple of other increases in there, a little bit of debt. As you saw, debt did not really go up that much. And we did increase our transfer to the airport. They are needing some capital equipment, such as I think one is a really large mower. They need to mow around the runways and keep that really clean. And so I think I put a couple of pieces of equipment in there for the airport to purchase these tractors and mowers. And then, so we always like to know, where's our money coming from? Okay, so as you can see, our revenue is 114.2 million, and this gross receipts tax does include the environmental gross receipts tax and the funds for the street improvements, 2,600 and 2,800. So typically our gross receipts tax revenue is about 72 million, 73 million. So you can see that we've really increased due to those two particular GRTs coming into the general fund now. Property tax, 13.2 million. Excise and other taxes, these are the franchise. We get franchise fees, as you know. We get a couple of other little taxes. I think we get some tax from cigarette tax, and then we get some license plates. So if you have Las Cruces license plates, we get some funding from them as well. And then other revenue, this includes funding like from within the departments. So things like the community development, they have permit fees and business license fees. The police department has fees. The Parks and Rec for, renting the parks and renting for baseball. And hopefully once COVID opens up and we're able to open up the city, this past year, those revenues have not come in very strongly, but hopefully we're anticipating that we're going to start off FY22, hopefully not jinxing myself, with a bang and get everything open. Our internet sales tax, it's not based on it's not based on sales of what is sold. This is a fixed amount. We receive about 2.2 million. We actually, in one of the special sessions, and I think I brought this up, the governor actually doubled the internet sales tax. So for FY22, the state has assured me that this will be our fixed rate for the fiscal year. So this is another graphic of where our money goes. So these are our expenditures, 115.1 million. This is actually, if you look in your book on page 12, this is where this information came from. And as you can see, the largest chunk of our funding goes for emergency services, for police department, fire. And then, as you can see, Parks and Rec has a large. She's growing. Parks and Rec is growing every year, close to somewhere around 9 to 12%, somewhere in there each year. It varies. As you can see, Public Works grew mostly because now that because of House Bill 479, all of those expenses are now coming into the general fund, and most of the street, well, not most, all of the street improvement expenses are now in Public Works. So Public Works is operating budget has grown as well. And then the others are remaining pretty much the same. And as I said, this follows page 12 of your book. And then this is a different view of where our money goes. As you can see, it just gives you where it's going. Most of it, as you well know, in previous years, and really just for businesses in general, the largest portion of the pie is always personnel. This is salaries and benefits. Our operating is 27% and our capital is 1%. Now I want to jump into our hold harmless GRT. Our hold harmless coming into all of our GRT receives hold harmless GRT. This is a specific hold harmless GRT that we set up, I want to say in 2016, I think it was that we started it. But
I think that's right. I think it was 2014 when we passed the tax.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And so, as you can see, we have a nice little beginning balance, 4.59. Revenues are coming in very steady as compared to 21. Our expenditures went up just a little bit. Transfers out went up just a little bit. So now we do not need to meet a 2/12 reserve on this fund because we meet it all in our general fund. So we have an available balance, as you can see, of 5.29. So we're going to jump into the next slide on your council priorities, Mayor and Council. And so Mr. Cedillo and I are proposing that we use this fund, the hold harmless, to be used for your council, proposed council priorities. And so with what we're going to be showing you and making a recommendation to you is to use about 2.78 million. That would give us an unreserved balance of 2.51. And so with that, Mayor, I'm going to be leading this, but of course, at any time, I've asked David to jump in. The column where it says budgeted in FY22, this is what we have budgeted. As you can see on the source of funding and the comments, we have put, if some of this is already budgeted in the general fund, we had it previously budgeted. I think, we've had 2 individual meetings with all of the council and mayor, and we've also had 2 work sessions on the council priorities. And so the last work session that we had, the mayor and council asked David and I and staff to come with a proposal to you. And this is what we're doing today. So what we are proposing, I'm only going to cover the ones in the green, but if you have any questions at the end of the presentation, David and I can go back to these as well. We're proposing a budget in the hold harmless for $2 million for the pavement condition index. This will be a perpetual expense, which means every year we will need to be budgeting this. Of course, we had already been budgeting the La Casa maintenance that was already in the general fund, the arts and cultural district improvements, the $15,000 that was already in the general fund as well. And then the senior center kitchen equipment, I did budget that already in the general fund as well. The airport operations, that was already in the general fund, worked with Andy, and we got that all budgeted for reclass of a position that he has. Then Gallagher Park, we're recommending or proposing that we put funding in there for Gallagher Park out of the hold harmless. That's part of the $2.78 million for $150,000. The Chandler Tank Park Phase 2 was $625,000, and we're proposing to budget that in the hold harmless GRT as well. The social worker was already budgeted in the Telshore Fund. The mobile integrated health program is in the general fund, the $535,000. The mobile crisis unit is budgeted within the police department. And then the El Paseo and Solano corridor, we budgeted that in the general fund as well. So we're proposing a budget in FY22 of about $4.1 million for your council priorities. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Mr. Scott Marr, who is our IT director, to talk about a new pilot program technology improvement plan. Scott?
Thank you, Leanne. And good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm Scott Marr. I'm the IT director. And I also have to apologize. I seem to have a frog in my throat as well with my allergies. The plan that I want to talk about today is a key component of our technology governance program. This pilot is the first time that we are attempting to launch this plan. The goal of it is to provide for better budgeting, planning, and management of technology-based solutions. We're primarily focusing on new business systems and applications that use web servers or database servers. And the schedule of the plan parallels the CIP schedule, which you're familiar with. Being a pilot, departments were asked this year to volunteer to participate in the process if they were planning on technology projects in FY22. Next slide, please. So the process that we go through in this plan is we start with the departments completing a technology project request form and submitting that request to their business systems analyst. That gets passed on to our technology review committee, which reviews these requests for compliance with our technology standards. That then goes with a recommendation to our steering committee, which reviews, prioritizes, and approves or denies the requests. Submissions are made in November, and the committee reviews are performed in December and January. And then moving forward, it's part of the city manager's office approval of the budget. It's included in the budget for the next fiscal year for those projects approved, and then comes to council as part of the budget approval process. Next slide. So the two projects that we have for FY22, which were submitted and approved, both from Quality of Life and both part of the transit program. First was Clever Devices replacement and upgrade, and a Dial-A-Ride customer software upgrade. Next slide. So the Clever Devices replacement, the current version that Transit is using is no longer supported and must be converted to a new product from the same manufacturer called CleverWorks. This software updates the GPS mapping and the bus time webpage so that there's real-time information to the public based on the location of the buses and the routes. It also tracks the route and driver time performance, which is a measure for their strategic goal. Next slide.
The Dial-A-Ride customer software, this is a notification system that will enable clients to book trips, receive automatic notification, and give the clients ability to cancel trips and receive reminders of the trips they have booked. So this will help free up dispatchers and assist operations for transit. And with that, next is David Cedillo and the Capital Improvement Program. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Scott. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. As Scott mentioned, I'm David Cedillo, Public Works Director for the record, and I'll be going over the Capital Improvements Program. So as Council is aware, we do have to have a CIP, which is required by our city charter. Article 5, specifically Section 5.05, simply states that one must be submitted to Council as part of a 5-year capital improvement program. As part of that, we go through an input process. Next slide, please. As part of that process, we gather input from council, public, departments, the city manager's office, and nonprofit organizations. Also from assessments, approved plans from council, such as Elevate Las Cruces, and also that of available funding. I'd like to go over again, just briefly, the difference between the capital improvement program and the infrastructure capital improvement plan. The CIP is a program which is approved by council that shows funded and unfunded projects. This is a plan that spans over 6 years, with the first year funded, the remaining 5 are unfunded. The ICIP is needed to be on the CIP to be eligible for submissions through the state legislature. So as part of that, that's part of that grant funding source. This is the 5-year plan that is outside of the funded column and is updated in the ICIP database every year. That database is housed by the New Mexico Department of Finance Authority, Local Government Division, and typically there are rarely any changes, but if those do occur, those have to happen with special permissions from the state. I'd like to share with you some of those changes that occurred for the FY22 CIP process and then the final product. As part of this, council is aware the city did go through a new organizational structure. So this made some changes to the CIP, whereas in the past, only departments were listed. With this new organizational change, you will notice that you do have departments and programs now listed in the CIP. For example, Economic Development as a department and Visit Las Cruces as a program. Another change we'd like to note is South Central Solid Waste Authority wants to have the ability to look for legislative funding. As such, they have moved into getting their request on the CIP under Public Works for future projects. They would like to go forward at the next legislature for equipment, as noted there in the graphic below. The other changes I'd like to highlight are those that we revised in the matrix that basically help all rank their projects. Some of these you may see, and they are existing ones from last year, although some of them have been improved and the criteria updated based on council's movement with their priorities as well. One to note, you will notice community benefit. Although benefit was in the matrix last year, this improvement we wanted to highlight and increase the improvements to those living standards, the creation of permanent jobs, equality, and increased access to resources and recreation. You will also notice planning alignment. This placed more emphasis on those plans approved by council, such as Elevate Las Cruces and the Active Transportation Plan. However, I would like to know that we do have a new item in there called Sustainability and Water Conservation. So this gives projects the opportunity to rank their projects a little higher due to those initiatives that they are doing with their projects, such as the level of water consumption, carbon emissions, and contribution to ecological processes. Lastly, we do have scheduling, although it was on there before, but we wanted to make sure and change this. Prior, we just said if your project was ready within a year. We know that we need to get projects going as soon as we have the funding available. This right here does increase that project's ability by making sure that it's shovel ready. So once budgeting is available, we can quickly move it out to implementation. So now I'll go over some of the looks of the new CIP. This is the first page, which is part of the packet. As you notice, there's not much change here. We have the department or program listed in the first column. The second would be their funded. Your next 5 are those ICIP, which ranges from FY23 through 27. And lastly, that funded column, which identifies the source. For the appendices, we have some that are existing. We have some new. I'll go over those. Here we have Appendix A, which tabulates all the newly funded projects for FY22. As you can see there, those are all the newly funded projects. Again, this will include any discussion from today's meeting on the final product for council's priorities as well. On Appendix B, we're highlighting and showing all the totals for all those projects listed in the CIP for newly, carryover, annual, and future projects by department and program. On Appendix C, I'd like to highlight a new appendix, which would be your park impact fees. So this highlights and identifies all the projects that have the PIF as a funding source. Now, it may be the sole or a contributing funding source, but it does identify that in the appendix on which projects do have that funding source. And for Appendix D, similar, we do have that for the TID. Again, that's the funding source for these projects, or whether it be the sole or a supplementing funding source. And with that, Leanne and I in the group will, we have notations to go through. I apologize. Next slide, please. Wanted to highlight some of those items and notations in the CIP. I know we've gone over this, but just wanted to mention these. We had recently the 2021 legislative session appropriations. Here you will notice that we do have those appropriations that will be coming in. If you notice in the column, the first column, it's noted 2021 legislative appropriation. Since we have not accepted, and when I say we, council has not accepted these funds or accepted that appropriation, it is out in the FY23 column. Once this comes before council and it's accepted, it will be moved into the funded column, and conversely, the CIP will be amended at that time as well. So here are those projects that were approved under the 2021 legislative session, and they will pop up right here. As you notice, we have the East Mesa Roads Drainage, Madrid Avenue, and so forth that were approved under this legislative session. Also, we have those other 2020 legislative appropriations that are still in need of acceptance. Now, we used March 15th as a cutoff to produce the document for the CIP. So although they may have already been accepted by council, once the full FY22 CIP is approved, we will be coming back at the new fiscal year in July to move those appropriations from 2020 into the funded column, and then conversely have the CIP amended. And here are those legislative projects that were accepted and approved during that session. Now, Leanne and I are both available for any questions from council and mayor. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Thanks, David. So, Councilor Vasquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, David. I just want to start off with one quick question here. That's around the CIP projects that are to be funded by the Hold Harmless funds. the Chandler Tank project and the Villa Mora Dam project. I think, thank you. So I think I see here for the Villa Mora Dam project is not funded in this fiscal year or the next 2 years, but in future years, which tells me we're not planning on funding that, at least right now, according to this budget for this year. But then in the slide prior, I think we do have Chandler Park or the Chandler Tank project funded, the phase 2. Could you just explain, David or Leanne, what the rationale is, like how that decision was made in terms of 2 very similar, I think, park projects?
Yes, thank you, Councilor Vasquez. Mayor, Councilor Vasquez, David Cedillo, Public Works Director. Although that is not being funded at this time, we do have funding available under this current fiscal year. We have an amount of $123,000. We also have 2020 legislative funding in the amount of $250,000 that we are waiting for approval to move into the new fiscal year. So based on that and those funds that are available, that would be the startup money to move the project forward as we seek additional funding for the plan.
Thank you, David. I appreciate that. And I think I just have to continue to advocate for Villa Mora Dam because it's already being used as a park. And I know I've said this before, but it's also in low to mid-income area of the city, potentially the largest open space that we can actually create to be a park that's on city property. And so I know I've asked for just the opportunity to build out some very maybe rudimentary infrastructure there that allows people to actually use that park with some degree of safety and trails and parking. I mean, whatever. I don't think it has to be a multi-million-dollar project now, but for me, where I see the needs are where people are already using existing park space. Like there's folks already essentially using that as that space. And so, I just wish that there could have been some prioritization, especially because it is in an urban area where you're not going to get more green space, I think, in that area than what is currently there at the Villa Mora Dam. So I'm just wondering in terms of I know the CIP projects they score differently based on the criteria, I think, that your department sets forth and other departments also set forth and the council sets forth. So I am just wondering, David, if the Chandler Tank project scored higher than the Villa Mora Dam Park project, and if you have any more insight as to why.
Thank you, Councilor Vasquez. Mayor David Cedillo, that process was based on the interactions and the process that we went through, as Leanne had mentioned, in the one-on-ones and the work sessions prior to. So based on that and trying to utilize the funding or what we already have in hand to move forward with some of these initiatives, that's how the recommendation is coming forward. Yes, you did mention that you would like to see some of these things, and that's what staff is looking and working towards with the available funding that we have now and what will be coming in once that 2020 legislative funding is appropriated.
Thank you, David. Obviously the Chandler Tank project is not in my district, and I know Councilor Sorg very much wants to see that park developed as well as I do with my own park in my district. It just would be helpful to know how that determination was specifically made as to if there are existing opportunities to fund parks in different parts of the city, what the criteria is of where we're going to invest, $600,000 to $700,000 on the development of a park. And my interest is really to make sure that is an equitable process, that there's considerations to available or existing park space in the surrounding neighborhood. Even something as the health conditions of certain parts or certain demographics of the city to make sure that our investments are going into the places where a green space like this is really needed, and is equitable. So maybe that's a conversation for us to have later. David, I would love to find some other sources of funding for Villa Mora Dam, besides, I think, the $170,000 perhaps that we have existing, which I believe is for planning and design. But again, I would hate for us to lose out on an opportunity in where people are already using an existing space as a park, not to begin to give our residents the opportunity to have safety and lighting and trails and, those kind of things. So I'll just stop there. But David, maybe we can have a separate conversation about how we get there later. But regardless, I appreciate all your hard work. These are easy decisions, and I know we have a lot of priorities. Not all of them can get funded too. So I appreciate you just hearing me out, because I've been talking about that one for a while. But I appreciate it, David, and Leanne as well. Your whole team for putting this presentation together, but for doing our budget is just it's a lot of work. And I may have some questions or comments later, but just wanted to bring that point up for now. So thank you, Mayor.
We appreciate it. Thank you, Councilor Vasquez.
Thank you, Councilor Vasquez. Mayor, step away.
I'm still right here, Mayor Pro Tem. I'll have to make a quick comment, and then I'm going to just take out for about 5 minutes. Councilor Vasquez, I'm just going to ask you something. Two things. One, I think the Chandler tank probably was, as was done, I don't know, accidental, or was not supposed to have been done by a previous administration. And I think they probably wanted to, get that back to where it was, where it used to be. But I was going to ask you something. I wonder, because if we really are serious about the extension of Madrid and the east-west, east-west corridor, I wonder if it would be good to have a work session on this, take a look at some possibility, because we're going to have a little bit of possibility of some commercial on either side of that street. And instead of selling it, just like what we're thinking of the Loman property, lease it, and then that money can be used to fund in perpetuity the improvements that you want to see. Then that way there is kind of, was that something you'd be open to, having a work session on that? Because I think it's time, because I don't think people really know the size of it and the history of it and the proximity and how it can actually really be developed. And I think if we are kind of creative to being open-minded to having some of this money that land itself can generate, because I think if we do have that park, there's going to be some vendors who are going to want to be there. You're going to want to have restrooms there, but you're going to have vendors there that can really add to the fun of people kind of using that area.
No, thank you, Mayor. And I think some degree of commercial activity there, I think has been in the iterations of the plan since the Apodaca blueprint was created. The first, I guess, design concept had a little bit too much commercial for me, because it was really, I think part of the return to our residents is that green space. But I think certainly some degree of commercial, like you said, that would produce the type of GRT that could help fund the sustainability of maintenance and everything else. I'm totally fine with that. So I think that's a good idea. Like I said, I just don't want to miss out on the opportunity now. If that is 3 or 4 years down the line, it's like, hey, let's let folks use this park with dignity in the meantime as well, to some degree. Just because, technically folks are trespassing there, right? Like, that's the city property. It's not a park. It's not designated as a park. And so if you're walking your dog on there right now, which I bet you a bunch of people are, they're technically trespassing. So I just want to get some minimal funds to open that up while we invest into the development of a permanent park there. But no, I agree with you, Mayor. I think that's a good idea.
Okay, well, we'll get that scheduled on a work session here upcoming.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Be right back.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilor Vasquez. Councilor Soar.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. To continue that discussion, the tables you have here are confusing. You have $700,000 for Via Mora, and then is that not there, or is it there? Do we have that 700,000 or don't we? David, wake up.
Yes, thank you, Councilor Sorg. I was waiting to see if Leanne wanted to go over, but I'll answer the question.
No, this is all CIP stuff.
Yes. So the first column that you see, the amount, that is the amount that was estimated for that project. That is just identifying what that would cost.
Okay.
The next three columns are showing, as Leanne had mentioned before, what has been or is going to be budgeted in FY22. The next column, which says budgeted in next 2 years, those are identifying sources of how those can be budgeted in the next 2 fiscal years, FY23, FY24. And then the last column, which you noted, the budgeted in future years, or anywhere between FY23 and FY27 of being budgeted in those outer years.
Okay. Okay. Now, is my understanding that there was some legislative money appropriated for Via Mora, wasn't there not?
Councilor Sorg, you
capital outlay?
That's what I had mentioned to Councilor Vasquez. We do have that 2020 legislative appropriation that still needs to be approved by council and brought in the amount of $250,000.
So then we can use that this coming year then, right?
Once that appropriation is approved by council and moved into the funded column, we can start using that funding, correct?
Yeah, I'm assuming that would happen. I don't see any reason why we would turn that money down.
No, sir.
Yeah, let's assume that 250 is going to be an FY22. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we can assume that. All right, so that's what's confusing by this table here. And then, all right, then that's okay, but I'm going to lead up to a resolution here, and that is that in the Chandler Tank case, there are a lot of housing that was built around Chandler Tank, and they all had collected park impact fees, and none of that housing, none of that subdivision, none of that neighborhood community ever got a park. Never did. Okay? Still don't have a park to this day. And it's been going on for what? Since 2006, 7, 8, when they started building those there. So that's what's happening here in this city. There are neighborhoods and subdivisions that don't get parks because of one reason or another. Nobody's ever told me why. So I want a resolution brought to the city council to vote on the prioritizing the using of park impact fees. Right now, park impact fees are dumped into a not real general fund, but a general like fund. And they're used wherever the staff wants to use them, or that as long as the city council approves them, of course, I understand that. So I think what we ought to do is prioritize the use of park impact fees that provides for park in those neighborhoods, those subdivisions that are being built that the park impact fees come from. And then what's left over, we can use on a lot of different things, Via Mora and everything else. So that's a resolution I want to see brought to the city council. I will draft a rough draft of it and I'll bring it to the city council here in the next month. Okay? Other than that, I like the budget. It's a pretty good budget. I see a lot of work has been put into it. We thank all those who are have been worked on it, and that's all I have to say. Mayor Pro Tem, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Sorg. Can you clarify for me, and just so you know, my internet is very unstable right now, so my video is off.
Right.
Can you clarify for me where the 250,000 is coming from that you mentioned earlier?
Did I mention 250?
Yes, you
Or
said,
did
let's
David do
assume
that?
well, one of you did. Let's assume the 250,000. Where was that coming from?
If David, help me out.
Yes.
David,
Mayor Pro Tem, Councilor Sorg, David Cedillo for the record. That 250,000 is coming from a 2020 legislative appropriation. At this current time, that has not been accepted by council. Once it is, then it will be moved into either into the FY22 budget once it's approved by council.
And this is for Chandler Tane, correct?
No.
No, ma'am. That is the funding that's available for Villa Mora Dam.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, got it. Okay.
Now, we got to be careful and get these things all straight, because I notice a lot of us get confused with money going here and there and everywhere.
Okay, I'll wait to ask my questions then. Thank you, Councilor Sorg. Councilor Bencomo.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and thank you so much, Leanne and David and the rest of your team for all the hard work you always put, but definitely around the budget. I hate that I can't see you guys. Okay, whatever. So, Leanne, mind you, I don't necessarily think we can say we're new anymore, but still, the budgeting process is intense. And so I might ask you just some very budgeting 101 questions, 201 questions. But as I was reading the book yesterday, preparing for today, there's just a couple things I noticed that I have some questions about. Can you talk through so like on page 12, for example, I'm noticing that there are some departments that are getting less, that are budgeting for less this upcoming fiscal year, some that are budgeting for more. How is that determined? Are those numbers presented by directors in the departments, or are they coming to you and city management and you all are sort of saying, no, I think this department's going to get less this year, this department needs more? Can you talk about how those decisions are made?
Of course. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Councilor Bencomo. So what we do is, as you know, we start really early, unfortunately, but what we do is we sit down with city management, and that was why one of the slides that I presented to you was, as city management, not necessarily just Mr. Peely, but the management team, we get together and we decide, we have to give some direction to the departments. And of course, this year, the direction was we're going to do the 2.5% increase in salaries. And typically on that one, HR takes care of it. They have everybody's salaries and they go in there and they run it and they load it into our, this year we used OpenGov as our budgeting tool. This was the first year that we used it, but typically it's in Munis. And then what we do is we ask each department, we pretty much told the departments that it was status quo. Where are you in your revised budget as of December 31st of 2020? So where you are right now is like your starting point. Now, I will tell you, some departments, may say, hey, we're not going to do this we're not going to do this program. It's ended. So they want to take that out, things like this. But, if you look, Counselor, on page 6, we have redone the city organizational chart and this budget. And if you, I think if you were listening, when you heard Scott Marr was talking about, or David also about the new, we have departments, but we also now have sections that we're budgeting. So as you can see, our org chart has a new look. So we had to, we moved out a couple of programs. I'll just call them programs. We pulled out a couple of programs out of some of the departments, such as Visit Las Cruces used to be part of economic development. Facilities management used to be part of public works. So some of the ups and downs that you're seeing by the department could be because They might have had that particular program pulled out of them and put into a different department. And one of those, and I'm trying to flip back to that page 12, if you see how much, like, for instance, David's project or David's department grew, okay? And if you remember, I was talking about House Bill 479. I think I've said that so many times in the last couple of weeks. House Bill 479, House Bill 479. Well, what used to be a special project or a special revenue, like I was talking about, has now been put into the general fund. And 2,600, which is one of those, is actually pretty much used, if not all used, 100% by Public Works. So that is one of the reasons why David's particular budget or Public Works budget grew so much. And then on some of the others, the reason it went down was because it could have been that we pulled out a particular program, like airport. Well, airport is now an enterprise, but it used to be for 21, it used to be or 2020, it used to be in the general fund. So we've done a lot of, changing around and moving some of these programs. So is it apples to apples? It's on some it is, and some it's not. And the best way of knowing which ones we pulled out is to look on page 6 on that organizational chart. That's the best way. So okay. Hopefully I've answered your question. Now we'll tell you that management and budget meet with each department multiple times. And then we have them fill out massive forms, unfortunately. And they tell us, here, we want to start this new project. We want to start this new program. Here's how much it's going to cost. And so, as you know, there's only so much money. The only money that we have in the general fund is our GRT, our property taxes. And, I went over the different revenues. That hasn't grown in a while, mostly because of the hold harmless GRT, which will end in 2030. So we're seeing as that's going down, but it's staying pretty stable in the revenue. So we do have growth. Kyle talked about population growth. So we're seeing growth. It just happens to be that in that hold harmless GRT, it is pretty stable. So overall, they come to us with these new programs, and sometimes they're budgeted, and it's really them talking to their ACMs and talking to the city manager on what we're going to budget and what we're not going to budget and bringing forward to you. And of course, this is a work session. So I was going to say a while ago to the mayor and to the council, this is the opportune time that if there's something that we have missed, we're taking notes. Please let us know, because if it's something, and Mr. Peely's online, if it's something that you would like to see budgeted, then by all means, we're ready.
Thanks, Leanne, for that answer. Yes, that definitely answers my questions. I appreciate that. Again, I apologize if these are rudimentary questions. I'm trying to fully understand this whole process. In terms of the 2.5 salary increases, was that across the board or just for union employees?
Mayor Pro Tem and Councilor Bencomo, it was across the board. Now, if we do have, and I think Joe Richards is on the line if I don't say this correctly, we do have a couple of union contracts. We have a fire department, police department, and then of course our blue collar. If they have a certain percentage in their union contract, HR, when they did the budgeting for each of the personnel and benefits, they went into those contracts and made sure that those particular people that are our union, whether blue collar, police, or fire, will get that appropriate percentage increase what's in their contract.
Okay, thank you. And then I'm gonna ask you a couple just like really specific questions from the book. Can you help me understand the condensed funds summaries portion of this, and just sort of, I was sort of wondering, like, why are some of these blank, right? Can you just talk through this portion?
Okay, so in the last couple of years, let me talk about the blank funds first. In the last couple of years, our new, well, she's not new anymore, but our finance director, Ms. Gayhart, we've been working with accounting. We have a lot of funds, if you can't tell from those condensed. We have a lot. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to get rid of some of these funds. There's some that we haven't used in years, but unfortunately they keep popping up. So we are trying to get rid of these and get rid of any of the excess available balance that we have in there. And so the reason you see a lot of blanks in there is because they may have like a beginning balance in there, or there might be some adjustments in there. And so we still have to keep showing that particular fund in our accounts. But our ultimate goal is to try to knock out as many funds as we possibly can that are not needed anymore. So that's why you're seeing the blanks. Okay. As far as the condensed funds, many years ago, before I took over budget, they used to have one page for every single fund. The book was just huge. It was huge. And so one of the things we worked with GFOA, we worked with the state, the DFA, and we said, can we condense these down and just show, here's the beginning balance, here's the revenue, very similar to, what we showed you on the general fund summary, here's personnel, here's operating, here's our capital. And they were like, yes, this is wonderful. Now we'll tell you at the end of when we finish the budget and it's brought to council and it's adopted, what we do is we take, we actually have in the book the condensed fund summaries, but we do have the full fund summaries, one page for every single fund. And we do put that on our web page. So that way, if somebody wants to see those. And pretty much what those look like, if you'll remember the budget adjustments that we bring to council on a monthly basis, Matt brings them to you. The one-sheeters that the one sheet that we have, that's what those look like. So instead of that version, we're just condensing it to where we're telling you, here's the beginning balance, here's the revenue, here's the operating, here's the capital, and, and then here's the bottom line.
Okay, that actually makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Specifically on some of those, I had a couple questions, like for example, the street maintenance operations. And so maybe this is for David. I saw that there was a decrease from fiscal year 21 to 22. Can you talk about that, David, especially given that this, street maintenance was, continues to be one of our priorities? I'm just curious.
So, Mayor Pro Tem and Councilor Bencomo, before David jumps in, sorry, David, are you talking about Fund 2600?
Yes.
That is House Bill 479. That is one of the ones that is being moved from the special revenue into the general fund. That is why you don't see it anymore, because, yeah. Now, we have not moved, if you'll notice, the beginning balance, we have not moved the beginning balance of 2,600 or 2,800, which is the environmental gross receipts tax. And the reason for that is, Counselor, is that the particular House Bill 479 went into effect in July of 2019. It did not, taxation and revenue did not change anything until this last month, March.
Okay.
And just to let you know, and I'm sure Councilor Flores and the mayor were going to let everybody know, at the Finance Select Committee, we gave them certain options that we could bring as an ordinance. They chose that we bring, because it's transparent, okay, that we bring an ordinance to council, and still showing that that these funds, when they come into the city, even though they're going straight into the general fund, that we still dedicate that particular percentage of that we dedicate it to street improvements. And so we're going to bring that to council as an ordinance. I hope to bring that to you in late May as a first read. And it will still go into the general fund, but we will be tracking it probably through a project number.
Okay, that's very good to hear, Leanne. Thank you so much. And then there was two things that I didn't know what they were. Can you explain the Telshore facility and the Police Protection Fund?
Okay, the Telshore facility. So are you talking about 27? So the Telshore facility 2705, that's the Telshore fund.
Oh,
So we never expense anything out of the Telshore fund. Typically, you will see that we do a budget transfer from the Telshore fund, which is invested 2705. We take it out of the Telshore and then we put it into 2700, which is the healthcare service.
that's so silly of me. I was literally imagining a facility. And I was like, what are they talking about? Okay.
You know, I'm not the namer of these funds, but yeah, but I have to live with them. So the other one was, what was the other one that you mentioned? I'm sorry, Counselor.
I'm looking for the number. It's the Police Protection Fund 2401.
Okay, so Police Protection Fund, and I'm pretty sure, and I apologize because I don't really have them, but in your budget, just to let you know, in your budget book, after the fund, this is the old, I shouldn't say old, the current budget book, after the condensed fund summaries, there's actually a list of all of the funds. And it tells you in there what these funds are, where the revenue comes from, and what they're used for. So we're talking 2401, police protection. It says this fund provides for the purchase of police equipment and police expenses associated with advanced law enforcement planning and training. The funding source is the Law Enforcement Protection Fund, administered by the New Mexico Department of Finance and Administration Local Government Division. And this is actually part of a state statute, and it requires these funds to be used to operate the police department. My understanding that this fund, and I'm sure Chief Dominguez is on the line if he wants to add to that, this would be very similar to the fire fund, as funding as well from the state. So the police get some funding and the fire gets funding as well.
Okay, no worries. That's a good explanation. And I'm sorry, you said in the budget book, where can I find these explanations, Leanne?
Actually, in the FY 21 budget book, they start on page 305. Not in the budget book that you recently got for FY 22. Okay. I'm talking about this budget book.
Oh, the old one. Okay, so I will go ahead and look at that. And then that's that's my last question. I just wanted to make a comment on, can you go to slide 18, please?
Sure. There you go.
Thank you, Leanne. You know, I've been reflecting a lot on sort of this visual representation of what our budget looks like, especially when I consider our strategic plan, when I consider some of the things that I believe to be some of the biggest challenges facing the city, you know, to be growing economic insecurity, you know, a poverty rate that hasn't moved for a really long time, recovery from the pandemic, a housing shortage, a housing crisis, if you will. When I consider some of those really serious challenges that put a lot of our residents in very vulnerable positions, when I look at this visual representation of the budget, I do not feel that it is representative of those challenges. And, you know, for the police department to have such a disproportionate chunk of the budget, to me feels like we need to do some serious reflection on the creation of this budget in terms of how are we really thinking about public safety, rethinking about public safety and what that looks like. For there to be actual prevention of the things police are dealing with, we must invest resources elsewhere. For there to be a decrease in any sort of property crime, we must meet people's needs. People must have their needs met and crime will be reduced. for the police department to stop dealing so much with issues like folks experiencing homelessness, addiction, mental health. We must invest resources elsewhere. And so for me, this is sort of the second go around, and I haven't seen that change. And I will keep advocating for us to seriously consider some of those things. And maybe my question is for IFO, and IFO, sorry to put you on the spot, but I do want to know, and I want to hear from my colleagues too. Like, when we think about those serious things, the serious issues facing the city, when you think about that, what is that one or two things that we are saying, this is a big deal? This is a serious issue that's facing Las Cruces and the quality of life of Las Crucens. And then when we look at this budget, does it reflect that? And, so maybe my question, IFO, is how are you thinking about that? How are you thinking about that with your directors in terms of how do we ensure that this is a more equitable process, that we are thinking about the issues in our city and then reflecting that budget to meet those issues?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. First of all, let me back up a little bit, Councilor Bencomo. I think you and I have had this conversation, and I don't know if this is necessarily something we can really just resolve at a budget meeting, right? I mean, you're talking about a fundamental shift in how we spend dollars as an organization. What I can tell you is that this is the typical pie chart or bar graph throughout the entire country. I'm willing to bet just about every city in the country has the same, if you looked at it, certainly from where I come from. When you look at what those costs are going to, it's all personnel. Personnel is the majority, as Leanne mentioned, of all our budgets. They're all over 70% is personnel here. Some are higher than others in different cities, but essentially that's what you're talking about. And so when we talk about cutting, or moving around, we're talking about shifting resources and also personnel. So we're looking at how many officers, how many, how many employees in whatever department is necessary. And so I do think it's a discussion that's maybe even bigger than the budget and how we look at that. I think a good step forward is the MIH program that we have budgeted this year, and I'd like to see how that works and how the return goes. We know that there's going to be great return, qualitatively, but even quantitatively, to see how that affects our overall costs. Like I said, right now, you mentioned, Councilor Bencomo, just a call to your colleagues and how they feel. And I think it is. I think that's where it becomes over my pay grade, where it becomes a council discussion on how you want to carry out policy in the city, and then we move forward and carry it out. But I will tell you, and everybody knows, I text you guys when there's crime, when there's, and we've noticed the crime in the city. We've noticed the resources that are needed to deal with those issues. And so, yeah, it's far beyond the budget. It's more on how we approach, policing and but like I said, where I come from, and I'm willing to bet any other city, this is the typical costs. You have your public safety, both fire and police, and then you kind of look at the other services, safety first with your citizenry. But I don't know if I'm, Councilor Bencomo, if I'm just dancing around your.
No, you're good. Thank you, IFO. I appreciate you saying that, and I think it is important that I note that these are conversations I have with IFO often, naming my frustrations, and I just think it's important for me to name my particular feelings about, and frankly, my analysis on this here publicly. And I know it's not going to get solved, and we're not going to shift any of these radically in a work session, but I do think that, just here publicly, I really do want to, encourage and push my colleagues to have this conversation, that while I agree with you, I guarantee you I agree with you that almost every single city's budget looks like this, to include even the federal budget. And there are conversations happening across the country about exactly this, about exactly how do we rethink public safety in a way that actually meets the needs of our communities and our residents. And I will keep pushing for us to continue having this conversation publicly, so that one day our budgets are truly representative of the issues that are facing our city, and representative of meeting the needs of those who are most vulnerable. So sorry to put you on the spot, Ifo, but I really am. But I just want to name that I do have these conversations often with Ifo, and I'm hoping that we can continue having them as a council publicly. Thank you.
Yeah, Councilor Bencomo, I appreciate you bringing that up. I will tell you this much, that if you notice, one of the positions, and I know Mayor Pro Tem has been advocating for it a lot, social worker. So this is really the beginning, and I guess it's unfair to just remove, and there's no way I would support that. Just remove money and just allocate it. We've got to, the police officers and primarily police officers and firefighters too, but primarily police officers, when they go on a call, the ideal is to have probably a social worker with them, a psychologist with them, all in the back seat, really, because they don't know what you're coming up onto. And so, they're asked to deal with so much stuff, but in order for us to slowly reduce that, and I'm sure they would like that. I'm sure they would be able, if we could have a whole different department that could deal with this, that's great. But, a lot of times when they're on a call, they have no idea what they're going to encounter. And we're asking them to do so much of these things that we're slowly working to eventually remove that. But I think it's just, I know that's a national conversation, and some people may have that fallacy that things like that happen here, and I don't believe that they do. Yeah, sure, we can always have improvement. Everyone can. I can, the whole city can, but I'll be real candid with you. A few weeks ago, someone asked me, "Hey, do you want to have a protest on Asian hate?" And I go, "No, it's okay. We don't have it here. I know it's happening back east, but we don't have it here. We're very fortunate, and I'm not here to bring that up when we've got our own slice of the pie here where we live, and it's great. Yeah, we have challenges like everybody else, but we'll deal with them. But what I'm trying to say is we're working through them. Well, we hear what the public would like, but that's what, and it makes sense though, because as I mentioned, I think we do expect too much from police officers. We expect too much from teachers. We expect they can take a child and just make them into the perfect person. And it takes a lot, and it takes a lot of different people working together. So that's all I wanted to say. And I'm glad that you agree it's not going to be done overnight. And yeah, sure, continue to advocate for it. That's great. But those are things that we're working to help. Fortunately, we have a expert in Mayor Pro Tem and yourself too. I know your background is social work, but to kind of figure out how can we move the needle, still keep police and fire priority number one, because that's really what it's all about. When you stop and think about it, what would you rather have, a road that's disintegrated or no police? Well, I'd rather have a road that's disintegrated. I'm sorry, I just would. What would you rather have, or something else and no fire? I mean, we need that. They are that essential. And some of that money, back in 2001, there was an election that so much of our GRT gets put into the police and fire, and that's automatic. So it may be disproportional because they're one of the few that gets their own funding source. The public voted for it overwhelmingly in 2001. I know that. I was there. That's when I got on the city council. So anyways, I just wanted to put my 2 cents into it.
Mayor, I I agree with most of what you said, but I do think that you're taking some of what I'm saying and exaggerating it a bit. I never said that these departments were not essential and absolutely necessary, but I don't necessarily, those choices you put in front are a little bit of sinister choices, a disintegrating road or no fire, or police. Thankfully, those are not the choices we're having to make right now. They're not. The city is not in a place where we're having to make such dire choices. And so I'm saying, while we have a fairly healthy budget in city, we should really consider what meeting needs of our communities look like that are beyond, and really rethink what public safety actually looks like. But yes, it is not overnight. It will not happen overnight. I just don't want my words to be turned into something that they weren't.
Okay, well, I apologize. I didn't mean it in that way. I'm just trying to explain that we're thanks to much input from you and Mayor Pro Tem and those that know this business, we're able to kind of slowly move the needle and try to provide those necessary resources to help our police and fire. So, okay, good. You're good? We're done? Okay, so next is Councilor Beta Studi.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Leanne and David and the rest of the staff for this presentation. Obviously, I had a set of questions and a way in which to ask them, but I'm going to deviate just for a moment to kind of respond to Councilor Bencomo. And then I will go back on my schedule. But I think one of the things that I was looking for when we saw these types of budgets are kind of completed or well thought out programs that work together, because we know that this is a very complex question that we're asking in a complex time, and it's going to take a complex solution. And so seeing the various items like an expanded mobile integrated health program unit, a crisis unit, seeing the social worker, like I said, all those little steps, I think, are the first start. At the same time, I think most of us are talking with EFO. I know I have had really in-depth conversations of the history of even how fire did a huge transition after housing codes changed and became EMTs, and how, in my personal opinion, I feel that policing is going through a similar type of growth and experience. What they're being asked to do now and the types of calls that they receive are very different than what was done in the past in a lot of ways. And it's unsustainable. And so how do we grow and kind of move on, and what does that look like? And just in my opinion, that type of stuff looks like investing in that training. It's truly competitive pay that you're getting people that are wanting to be in this type of profession because it is an act of service for them. And so you're getting high quality people, and then we are hopefully going to incentivize those that have specialized training in perhaps even social work or things like that. But there's a lot of different ways that it could go, and I think there's a lot of conversations to still be had. But I'm hopeful that this is the start, that we're putting things in this year, then can start addressing that, and why we talk over the upcoming year of looking what that planning looks like, and realizing that we still have even new state bills that are going to impact the way that we need to train or to operate. And so we're going to have to really take time to recognize all the impacts that those changes have been made, and perhaps if we ever see federal changes, and how we can hopefully be leaders in our community on what I think policing is, and what that next phase might be like. So that's all I'll say on that issue. But I'm going to go back and say thank you, Leanne, again. One of the items that you kind of touched upon was that for municipalities, we talked about how most of the budget does go for personnel issues. And out of curiosity, I was just going to ask on what percentage is usually, yeah, thank you. That percentage, is that average pretty much for most municipalities to have that type of percentage?
Mayor, Councilor Stuvey, it really is. Actually, I went back to several budgets, and I've actually been in this position for 3 years, and we've been between 71% to 73%. And as we, we do have quite a bit of personnel. I think you can actually see in your budget book, we put a list of the personnel numbers by departments. I want to say, I think it's right in the financials. So we do have quite a bit of personnel. I know it's in here. I'm sorry. But we typically do run that. What other cities are actually running, I want to say they're probably about the same. I'd need to do some research, and I can do that. Maybe look at cities that are comparable to us. I think El Paso and Albuquerque would be too big, but what I might do is go and look at Rio Rancho, who's very similar to us, and see what their personnel percentage is running. I can check into that, and then I can send you that information this week.
That's very helpful. And with that, I also see personnel, there's different types of personnel, and some are, some individuals are supplying a very direct service to our constituents. And so that to me also makes a difference. When we have programs, we'll just take like the youth specialists, those that are doing after school programs, they're providing a direct service. So by adding them, we're increasing that service base. And so for me, that is even different than we have more of administrative and those types of programs. And so I don't mind necessarily seeing the personnel, because I know especially if the increases are going to that user, so we can expand programming and expand our usage. I think that's, for me, that makes it worthwhile. With slide 22, I have to ask, because I actually got a constituent asking about this today, was about median landscaping, and they were talking about, I believe, the medians on Loman, if that was the same project that was listed there, or if that's for a different median landscaping.
So Mayor, Councilor Stuvey, I'll actually see if I can get David to, maybe he might be able to look at that. What I can do is go into the council packets, remember, that we had given to the council months ago, and see what it lists in there for the medians. Unless, David, do you know offhand?
Thank you.
I believe it's Loman, some of the Loman medians, Councilor Bates-Studi.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify on that one. And then my next one is actually for David. And thank you. With this new kind of way to capture all the CIPs and everything, and in your opinion, are there any projects that you feel are kind of timing themselves out, or have just been on the list for a very long time that, things have changed, perhaps the budget might be very different now for that type of project? Do you see any of that with those that are on there?
Mayor, Councilor Bates-Studi, David Cedillo for the record. That is a great point. And one of the changes that we made several years ago to the CIP was to show those carryover projects. Mm-hmm. And as part of that document, that lists those projects that get carried over from year to year to year to year that don't ever start. So that we identified that to be able to reevaluate and look at the projects that we have on there and say, based on how we're moving forward with funding, priorities, initiatives, our strategic business plan, Elevate Las Cruces, are these going to be as beneficial to the community, and why are they on there stagnant? So that was one of the big things that we're looking as part of the CIP, to be able to identify and take a look at that and say, okay, if this project is not moving forward, how else can we utilize the funding to get that benefit out to the community?
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I was just going to ask, with Leanne, are there any other legislative changes that were made in this last year that you anticipate us having to just take into consideration for this upcoming budget cycle?
Mayor, Councilor Stuvey, I'm going to ask Mr. Peely to help me on this one. I want to say that the only one that I was looking at, I want to say it was House Bill 4, which changed for the police department. There might be some concerns and trying to read that particular act. I don't know if there were others. I know Mr. Peely meets with our lobbyists. Maybe he might have some something to add to that as well. But that was one that particular I was looking at.
I'm sorry, Councilor Bettis, will you repeat your question?
If there, thank you. Evo, the question is, are there any upcoming legislative changes that were made that we need to be considering for this upcoming budget cycle?
Oh, not that I know of, and I know Leanne mentioned House Bill 4. We still don't know all the implications of even that bill, but from what I understand, I don't think there's any direct budgetary implications that we need to. Now, we're expecting a big windfall from the cannabis legislation passing, so we may have a revenue change, hopefully, but no, I'm not seeing any direct impact to the budget.
Okay, thank you. And you look forward to that work session with Mr. Haran as well.
And Mayor, Councilor Stuvey also, the only other one was recently there was one that was passed on our para, which is our retirement, and it increased the percentage for the fire department. So we are working with the HR department on that particular one. We may be, after the new fiscal year, be bringing a budget adjustment unless we can get those percentages in before we bring the budget to adoption on May 17th. So we're looking at that one as well.
Okay. Thank you so much. And thank you once again for all the work that you and your team have done with this budget. Almost everything that I wanted was on, but I will still also have to advocate for upgrades with some of our parks that are much older. But I also see opportunities, I talked about perhaps expanding broadband to Gomez Park, but that is something when we look at perhaps funding that comes from the American Rescue Plan, if we can see where we can tie in some of these priorities to any type of funding that we get there so we can still accommodate. And thank you, Mayor.
Well, I couldn't find Rio Rancho, but I did find New York City and Chicago at 90% for personnel. And we still are the second largest city in the state at 104,000 and change, and Rio Rancho at 101,000 and change. So there you go. Let's see who's next. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to try with my video, so let me know if I come in and out. Appreciate Leanne, David, and others, my colleagues. And I too want to respond a little bit about the pie chart, sort of understanding where most of the budget comes from, and the previous that was at slide 18, where our money goes, if you will. I appreciate this, but within each of these departments, there's so many projects and services and programs. And, those of us that are a little more seasoned at this know what they are. And maybe not even more specifically. So this is sort of when I look at this, I think does our budget reflect our values? It's hard to just determine out of this, right? At first glance, we see some areas, safety being two of the areas that are most that have most of the budget, or a significant part of the budget. But when I think about housing, for instance, and it being put under economic development, all the grants that we receive related to the programming, and kind of to Councilor Betas-Duvi's point related to direct service, like our youth, our people that are working with youth, that direct service. This doesn't really get, I think, to the crux of that. And so I'm really going to challenge staff about looking at a different way that we can, and I'm thinking about a pie chart that would be more reflective of, right, where our money goes to, and those sort of social determinants of health, right? Those important pieces, housing, food, behavioral health, those kinds of things. Because I think it's going to say a bit of a different picture, and it'll definitely inform the public, people who are really not familiar with our budgeting and our budgeting process. And so I like for us to take a stab at kind of looking at that. And I appreciate Councilor Bencomo's remarks. I think those are very important ones. I think we really need to look at it, but I suspect, as Ifo indicated, that most municipalities and commissions do it in this way. And so I like to challenge us in really re-examining, just looking at a different way to report the way that the funding is, and giving, and just remembering that there's folks that are not a part of this process. So I think of all the victim, advocacy that happens, within the police, some DV programs, there's some great from, like we mentioned in fire, right? The integrated health. When you look at it, you don't get to see any of that in there unless you're very intricately involved, in the city and understand this. So, Leanne, I'm not sure if there's a way that we can re-examine the way that looks. I'd really love to see us identify kind of in those special areas, those areas that reflect health, in all levels. It would be interesting to see, and then where the grants fall and who gets more grants and what kind of grants and whatnot, especially that we've been very clear as council what our priorities are moving forward. So that's all I'll say about that. Again, I appreciate the work that's already been done. And as far as, I just want to go back to the technology piece. I appreciate having Scott and talking about, sort of the projects, I guess, that are happening, and they're a bit foreign to me. So you mentioned the transportation one specifically, and so I'm really interested in hearing a little further. It's one of the things that I think is going to be really important to move us into, a different level of service. And so the clever devices and sort of the GPS mapping, the web, those being able to see, like, on a moment's notice, and then as using that as a supervisory tool, right, in terms of are we on time and how long are things at. But when I saw that, I thought, is this an opportunity to kind of change what's happening currently, and be able, so for folks like, for instance, me, can I just via an app, can I purchase a ticket or a monthly ticket from my phone and be able to then show, the drivers or run it through my phone through a code of sorts, Is that what this is about? Is that what that is entailed, or is it just for the identified pieces that you pointed out, Scott?
Mayor Pro Tem, I'm going to defer to Mike Bartholomew, who I believe is on the call. This is his projects. As far as I know, this is just a replacement, at least the Clever Devices part is just a replacement for their existing system. I'm not sure what additional features this upgrade would have. So if Mike can jump in.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, this is Mike Bartholomew, Roadrunner Transit. The Clever Devices replacement is to update the software that we have that's about 7 years old now. Oops, that's about 7 years old now. And to get it a little bit more accurate in how we, for the geolocation of the buses, it also is going to allow us to do a lot of changes. Like if we do a route change on our own, we could move bus stops a little bit. We could move routes around a little bit with this without having to pay for an expensive kind of a redo by the company because we did a minor change to a route. This will allow us to do minor changes. And then once we get that upgrade installed and our data gets more accurate, then we go the second part of this, the second phase of this would be to add automatic annunciation system to the buses. So it basically announces where the bus stops are automatically over the speaker system on the buses. The dial-a-ride one, the trapeze one would be more for just the dial-a-ride customers it could allow them to schedule rides. It would have a callback feature to let them know that they're for ride confirmation, or text back rather, can text back information about the ride is like 15 minutes away, get ready kind of a thing. So that's what those two programs are for. Neither one of those would be like for a pass purchase on a app type program for the fixed route.
Okay. Thank you. Can you hear me? Thank you, Mr. Bartholomew. I appreciate that. I think these are all great changes moving forward. Something I think that you've talked about at different times throughout the years, and that I think will be really helpful. So appreciative of your explanation. And then I wanted to talk about the funding and the funding that's going to be allocated specifically. I appreciate all that. These are a lot of things that I've advocated for over the years. I think it's going to be important, some very important steps in dealing with getting to the root causes of why we've had such an increase in reports and calls and violence and maltreatment of children. And so I do think that it's been a slow process. I wish we could change overnight, but I know that that's not possible. And so I wanted to really talk a little bit about the funding that should be coming from the CIP, the state, in relation to the Villa Mora Dam. And I really appreciate Councilor Vasquez's points about the way by which to look at it, right? It's in a more underserved area. You think about health and social determinants of health. You think about these, that already, this route is being used already. And I'm wondering if we can come back with a resolution, Councilor Vasquez, that supports a green park. And I like Mayor's suggestion about coming back for a work session. But in this balance, when you think about the 250,000, and if I remember correctly, it's for design, right? To study, if you will, and then to basically capture a design or develop some sort of design, if you will. But and I'm not sure that it will take the whole 250,000, but I mean, there's a lot of trash that's accumulated there. It's not set up for as a park, if you will, but people use it. I'm worried that if we don't do something quickly, whether we're waiting for this money or not, that that we could be liable for some things that go on there. And I'd really like to see, and maybe the design will tell us a little more, but I'd really want to talk about putting forth some additional funding, and not wait a whole fiscal year. And I'm not sure when, David and or Leanne, do you know when that money might arrive to us from the legislative session?
Mayor, Councilor Gondeta, I'll check with Amy because she takes care of the legislative funding. I know that we are filling out some questionnaires for the recent funding. It all is response to when they go out, the state goes out for bonding. So I will double check on that. If she has like a date when we're actually going to be bringing that to council, and I'll let you know. The other thing about the Villamora Dam, and that's why I brought up this slide for the Hold Harmless GRT, Counselor, is because, I mean, there is still some unreserved balance. I mean, we're going to be bringing a resolution to adopt the budget on May 17th. So as I mentioned earlier, David and I both mentioned, this is a time where council, the mayor and the council can let us know that you want to increase something or decrease something. And so I just wanted to show you, I mean, we still have 2.51 in this particular fund that we can still, use some of this. And the other thing too is, and I didn't check to see, but I don't know if maybe, and I don't want to put her on the spot, but I'd like maybe for Sonia to see if she can maybe touch, because we did touch base with her before when we did the council priorities, especially for Chandler and for Gallagher. So I don't know if maybe Sonia might want to jump in and have some thoughts on the Villamora Dam. So
thank you, Leanne.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of council. Sonia Delgado, Director of Parks and Recreation. Villamora Dam. We need the funding for it. Well, we need the funding for it. There's a lot of work to do at Villamora Dam. They'll need to redo Madrid, so we have to work very closely with Public Works. That will probably have to come first before we start thinking about utilizing it as a park. We do understand that there are individuals out there. There's individuals all over our city in places that may or may not be city property. And we run into that often. We get a lot of different phone calls about things like that. But when it comes to Villamora Dam, we still have a lot of work to do on the front end. We can get it done. That can happen, but we'll definitely need a funding source. And I can't speak to what it would cost to redo Madrid and realign that if need be. We'll also need a parking lot. So there's lots and lots of things to do with it. It's not quite shovel ready. Whereas Chandler Tank, we've done a lot of work there already. It's going to be a little bit easier to get some of those items taken care of a little bit quicker. And then, so, I do like the fact that Councilor Sorey had made mention of prioritizing the PIF. I had made mention of that prior. That would be important so that you can understand what projects you want to go first, because we do get a lot of firsts come our way, and they all can't go first. So we're looking forward to that, and that'll be great. So we can take those into consideration and get these projects prioritized and get them done.
Yeah, Sonia, I really appreciate that, and I'm thinking, we have this balance still available. There's still some money available. Why can't we pull the 250 now to start working on the design? Cleaning up, because it's bad. I walk, not so much in the area, but through it. I don't do that. I've done it maybe once or twice, but have walked up in that area, and it's not becoming, and we need to be taking care of it. And I'm not suggesting that you all are out there, trying to clean up and whatnot, but I would really like to see us start on this, and it starts with just cleaning up the area, and then having they could them come in and do this design. And I don't see how when we do receive the funding, if it's not something that's going to be given to us, within the next 6 months, that we start it, and then that we come back and replenish the fund when we receive it. I feel that it's something that needs to happen. And so, do you have an idea where the Madrid will be worked on?
Mayor Pro Tem, no, I do not. I would have to defer that to David Cedillo. But before I do, when it comes to cleaning, since it hasn't been designated a park as of yet, it won't be turned over to us until it's a park. The best I can do at the moment is we can try and put together a volunteer group that can go out there and help pick up trash. And then once that facility becomes ours, we'll also be looking to add additional team members to our team to make sure we can take care of that, because that is a very large parcel of land. And even with trails, as you know, people utilize our trails, they leave trash, and there's a lot of work that has to go into it. So like I said, there's a lot of pieces we need to put in place. We certainly can get that done with the help of Public Works and working closely with them. And we will continue to do so. But in the meantime, I will see if we can keep Las Cruces beautiful and maybe get a group out there to do a cleanup. And I'll turn it over to David to do.
Thank you, Sonia. I appreciate that. And let me know, because there's a few people that live in my district that have voiced some interest in the cleanups. And so it was the beginning of COVID. So I think people are a little fearful, but it feels like, we're turning a corner and people are more interested in doing that. You had some people participate in your Keep Las Cruces Beautiful event not too long ago. So I'd love to see that. And again, I'm recommending that, Councilor Vasquez, I'd be happy to work with you to put forth a resolution to name that a city park, a green space, and then looking forward to when the work session comes. But again, I think a lot of this needs to be sooner rather than later. And so I'm advocating for, money to be put forth, and just generally thinking about this area now. Then I guess, David, do you have some idea of when that Madrid area will be worked on?
Mayor Gondeta, before I let David start, I wanted to let you know I did talk to Amy just now. She said that she's waiting on DFA to get us the agreement. It's actually over at the New Mexico Environment Department. They're putting together a new agreement for the the 250,000 for the Villamor Dam. So hopefully we'll be bringing that to council in about 3 months. She said it's for design and then limited trail amenities, which includes lights and parking and et cetera. So I'll turn it over to David now.
Thank you, Leanne. Mayor Pro Tem Gandara. The Madrid project, we do have that slated to start. We do have the funding for it that is in the queue to start the design, because there will be a little bit of a realignment. And that we're also waiting on NMDOT to finish their study corridor of I-25 from Loman to Angler. So we're looking at that to make sure that we have that in place as well too. So we do have funding. We are starting on that design here in the fall, and then as we move forward, we can get that as well. Just to note, this project also, it did have 2021 legislative funding in the amount of $400,000 that we're waiting to also accept into the budget as well.
I appreciate a time frame, David. There's a few people that have asked about that area, concerned about the streets that rub up against Madrid, and so and I'll be crafting an email here shortly over to you about one of the streets in particular, but the caller did have concerns about Madrid, and I said it's in the queue, but I don't have a time frame, so let me figure on that. So anyhow, I appreciate the information. I'm really excited about the different priorities. I know that it's a lot of work and very, very difficult to put into place and listen to all our exciting, plans and such. But I appreciate each and every one of you. So thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Sword.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, I just need to comment on some of the stuff that's been discussed so far. I sympathize with Councilor Bencomo. The graph that shows where our money goes is not a good image. I'm all for a discussion on how we can make our police force a little more efficient, maybe. But on the other hand, I've had so many requests for people that said, why don't we have some police out here in this place or that place? It could be anywhere in the city, to watch traffic and the speeders and all the violations that you have. And I noticed on the police department 4-year history, the personnel numbers keep going up and down, and it's just an unsettling thing. But yeah, I'm all for a discussion on how we can make our police department better and also provide more funding for our social programs, the affordable housing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm all with it. Then on the Via Mora, why don't we just go ahead and take $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 of that unreserved balance and just do it? Let's get it over with. Let's not discuss it any longer. Let's just do it. So whatever it takes. Now, the problem with the street, if you're going to wait for the street to get done before you do the park, it's not going to be done very fast. We're talking years. And so maybe we should start on something in the park that isn't going to be affected by the street. So that's what I said. And I agree with Mayor Pro Tem. It is somewhat of an eyesore there. As I drive by it, I see it too. And I have all kinds of visions of how nice it could look. With a little water here and there, probably take out some mesquite trees or shrubs there so that it doesn't catch all of the trash that goes blowing through, different things like that. And so, yeah, that's I think what we should be doing here. I agree with you all. Thank you, Mayor. And good job, Leanne and David and the whole staff on getting this budget going here.
Thank you, Councilor. I'll just give you a word of caution. So, reason why I think we need to wait until the street is done. I think we can have a work session. We can start the planning. But if you go and work on the park and do some things to it, and then turns out that when Rose has to go and do some things, and then maybe has to tear it up after you just got done doing something.
No, you didn't hear me, Mayor. You didn't hear me, Mayor.
Oh, no, I did hear you. But I'm just saying. But
not that it's going to be affected the street at all.
Well, it might, because what if it needs some parking? What if it needs a parking lot in there? What if it needs, what if people want to be able to park there and then go? So,
but there's a big, huge space there that some work could be done on, not alongside of Madrid.
Well, and then we got to figure out how we're going to continue to pay for it. I think a work session, sit down.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Roadrunner North and how many years it took for that street to be built. I fear we're going to have the similar thing with Madrid.
Roadrunner North, that was a lot of that was because it was owned by developers, and that wasn't our. It was.
No, it was the city. That's the city built Roadrunner North.
Well, that little portion, but the other part the connection, we did it because it was owned by some developers.
Yeah, and it took 3 years to get it done.
Well, yeah, but that's the thing. There was no reason to do it. I mean, that's them. And they could control however they want to do it. But anyways, that's another story. Thank you for your comments and Councilor Vasquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you all. As we go into, I know a kind of a late afternoon session here, but budget is really important. And so I appreciate all of the discussion that's been had here. One of the things that we get to control as representatives of the people of our districts that really makes a difference. And so I really appreciate this discussion. I keep going back and forth between the discussion around public safety and what Councilor Bencomo brought up in terms of the priorities of our community and our values and how that reflects in how we spend our money. And I think this is a good example, talking about a local park in an area that is a historic area that has a lot of folks who, aren't going to get new infrastructure, new investment for a long time. There's no developers that are putting in anything in that area. It's all going to be up to the city to improve this part of town. And so I think of parks, honestly, as an anti-poverty, pro-public safety effort. When we can reinvest in these areas of town that oftentimes do suffer from those heightened levels of crime or property crime or violence or any number of those things, the built environment has a big impact on the psyche of a people, of a neighborhood, of a community, right? And so if you think that you live in a neighborhood not worthy of having a park, or you think your city doesn't care, your mentality as a resident of that neighborhood also leads you to think that, hey, maybe I'm not as valuable as other people in other parts of the city. And that often is that road that leads us to think about, where we're investing and why we even need like police in the first place in these areas. I've had many discussions with our police department, as I have with Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem and others, about the need to reinvest in these neighborhoods as a tool to help prevent crime, right? It's not just about enforcement. It's not just about showing up and taking a report and then coming back later and following up on it, which is where a lot of our resources go toward, right? It's about preventing this in the first place. And so that I really agree with. I think when we say we don't have the money for a park in a neighborhood like this, we're saying that that's part of our values, right? Of what we want to invest in. And so this is a good example, I think, of we could have all the excuses in the world to say we can't do it, including let's wait till it's the right time. Like I said, either let's put up a fence around this whole thing and not let people in it. If that's what we're saying, that this is not a park, that people can't come there, let's put up a fence then and say that you can't come in, because I don't think we can have it both ways. We can't keep it a pseudo park for the meantime and be okay with that and not willing to make an investment in it. And I do appreciate so much my fellow councilors for wanting to perhaps see how we can tweak this budget to make that happen. I think there's ways. I mean, you look at all the trails outside of the city, Baylor Canyon and Soledad Canyon and the Sierra Vista Trail. Those don't have amenities. Those don't have big parking lots. Those are trails that are managed by the Bureau of Land Management, and they're pretty much in a natural environment that work just fine for people. So I think we can do something there. And then just to further what I'll say too on this discussion around just the future of our budget and the discussions around public safety and how much we invest in our police department. I think nothing should ever be off the table or non-negotiable. I think those are part of the hard conversations that as a community and as a country we are having, and where real change starts in starting to tweak where we invest in as a community. And so nothing should be off the table. Nothing should be non-negotiable. I think rethinking what public safety looks like, and we're doing it. I'm not saying we're not. I think that the investment in the mobile health crisis center is amazing. And I think if it works, then let's double the budget for that next year and let's triple it the year after that, right? So I do appreciate that we are innovating in some ways, and that we have room to do more, and we don't have to wait for the state or the federal government to act and tell us what is good policing and what is not. I think, we can listen to our community and also do things that will change how we invest. And so I'll just say that much. I think all options should always be on the table for that. But with that said, Mayor, thank you. I appreciate it. I really do hope that from this work session that we can come to some resolution in terms of an initial investment in Villa Mora Dam to put a sign up, put a few lights up, let people who are enjoying that park now, actually think that the city cares and invest in a park there. And so I think there's some very low cost things we can do while we work on the redevelopment of that street. And I think that'd be fine, because as we mentioned, it's a huge property. I mean, it's a huge opportunity that the city won't ever get land like that in that part of the city again. So thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it.
Councilor, before I get to EFO, I'm going to go off of what you said, that what did you say? All things are on the table,
yeah, just there's, yeah.
Okay, let me ask you this. And Villa Mora, it's got on both sides, right? But primarily more on I'm bad at directions, I guess on the north end is the larger side, I think. Well,
I'm not sure which side is bigger. I think maybe this,
What I was going to propose, something to think about, and this is why the work session is. Earlier you saw, I think you did, I think you were in the work session, maybe you weren't, when the proposed Loman area, right? If we did on one side and did something similar, not only would that allow for more mixed income housing, the money that was generated off that could be dedicated solely for the park across the street. And talk about, now you have a funding source and you've got money to do whatever you wanted to do and really make it a really premier park. Not skimping, not doing this. I mean, now you're talking and dedicated, just like how the money that was dedicated just for the downtown area, that money dedicated for across the street. Something to think about. Just something. Okay. Ifo, you have a comment?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just a couple of comments. If I can make a couple suggestions on the Villa Mora Dam first, and then just some comments, maybe concluding from the staff perspective with this budget. So just to give you a little background with as we've gone through the council priorities, just to let you know, when it comes to council priorities, I try not to rank them myself, right? It really comes off of our discussions with you. Of course, we have our CIP and a ranking system, but when it comes to council priorities, it's really, we go through this and see how we can get it done. And I will tell you, after considering everything, the decision comes to me to say, okay, where do we throw the dollars that we do have? And specifically to the Mora Dam, my thought process was, and with others here, that if we had a funding source identified, check, and we'll move on to the next. And that's really the way I looked at it. I remember Councilor Vasquez, or maybe if it was with Mayor Pro Tem or both, in our tour, going by the Villa Mora Dam and being very impressed with the possibilities there as well. And so my thought, I can tell you my thought process was, okay, we have a track record of legislative funding. And so let's just keep on that track, and there's your funding source, and we can, allocate to some where we don't have that track record. So that's really all it is. I think from a staff perspective, we could find a way to make it work, especially if we have another funding source, like you mentioned, Mayor, to add to it. But a suggestion I have is maybe we do move forward. You have the 250, let's go on the design. We can try and pull some funds out to allocate now, or look at the design. We could put the 250 there now, look at the design and come back mid-year to see what we want to move on next. But we know we do have some money. We have a little bit of money to pull. If that's, always as a city manager, you're counting, right? You're listening to the council, and you're counting each opinion that comes up. And I feel like this is one of those priorities that we should consider based on everyone's comments. So I'm glad to do that. I'm glad to go back with staff, take a look at what we can come up with, put that in there. I don't think that'll be a problem. Like you said, you see where some of that fund balance, where we'll propose to pull it from. And we have some fund balance there, so we can do that and have further discussion there. And then just a couple of other things. The direction we gave from the city manager's office, from my team to the staff, Didn't give them much direction besides if you had extra FTEs that you were asking for this year, the default setting is to not include those. Now we did look at it from a case-by-case basis. As you see, there are some, you have a social worker there, but there were certain, the default was that we didn't want to grow our staff. We didn't want to grow our budget in that way. If we didn't have to, we have a lot of vacancies that we wanted to look at. We wanted to reclassify first. And so those are some of the parameters we gave our department heads. I think they've done a great job of coming back with some solutions. And one, just for the sake of being efficient with our budget, but also the other thing that we haven't talked about, that I know I've talked about this individually with counselors throughout the past months, we are looking at our premiums, and we're going to go out to bid here pretty soon, and the hope is that we can find a better solution first of the year next year, so it'll be mid-year into mid fiscal year. And so that's something where I've told staff, like, let's look at where we are from a personnel standpoint, because this is the pot that's going to increase or decrease based on what we get back from our premiums. And that's the goal, is we want to move it. We got a study recently back from our consultants that shows how far off we are from the rest of the state, the rest of the public sector. And that's something we really are taking a look at and want to bring back to the council at some point when we have numbers, or else it would be a part of the budget. But we need to make sure we have those numbers there. And so just summing up the budget and some of the parameters we've given our staff, not much besides those things that we wanted to focus on. I think our department heads have done a great job of really honing in on the budget, especially Leanne and her team and David. I appreciate all that they've done to get us here thus far. They're great at what they do. And then just lastly, in light of the discussion we've had, about just the budget makeup, with public safety. One thing people don't recognize, our largest asset and liability of just about any municipality is our roads. That's it. They're hundreds of millions of dollars. They're worth that much. And a lot of times, my colleagues, my other city managers, when we go to different cities, we do judge each other by the way their roads are maintained. And because it is the biggest part of your budget as far as your assets in the city. And so when we talk about what our budget reflects, does it reflect our values? It's a little difficult when we're talking about our operating budget, because our operating budget, a lot of times 90% of it is fixed. They're fixed costs, and they reflect necessities. And a lot of times when we're talking about improving an area, it's really counterintuitive to talk about decreasing money, right? Decreasing funding. A lot of times when we improve a certain area or department, increasing the budget actually helps, not decreasing the budget. And so when I think about public safety, I think everything's on the table, but I also believe, when you look at our salaries, when you look at our officers per thousands, we aren't high. And so when we're thinking about improving and we're thinking about getting the best and asking our officers to do more than what they were previously asked to do, or retain a high level of competency and customer service, a solution may be that we increase, because we need to retain those officers, and we need to get training, and we need to get the whole different type of officer into a whole different level. And so that's something I just wanted to throw out. And I think that's the same it goes through sort of the theme throughout the entire budget. A lot of times when we're looking at improving things, it's, money talks, not necessarily pulling money that will improve. But with that, Mayor and Council, I appreciate the opportunity. I know we'll have other times to present the budget in its final form and for your approval. But I appreciate the feedback and the comments. We are all taking notes here. And so especially with the Villamor Dam and some of the things that were mentioned, we'll go back with staff, take a look at it and see if we can route some more money to those projects. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you, Ifo. Before I get to Councilor Flores, just, yeah, and I know you all know this, but the budget is, for the most part, if we pass it as is, we need to make sure that departments know what they've got to operate their departments. But that doesn't mean that we can't come back later and come after some of this unreserved balance to be used to augment things that the council wants to do. Okay. All right. Councilor Flores. Excuse me.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Leanne and David and Sonia and my colleagues for the excellent questions and concerns that they posed. I agree with everything everybody said. I think when you see a bar graph that shows that our police department's paid the most, or that personnel takes a huge chunk of our budget. I know when I first learned about how much money goes for our personnel, I was horrified. I thought, why do we spend so much money on personnel? Well, just the way it is, and it was explained to me and very well. And I appreciate your words, Ifo. I agree with Councilor Gandara's comment about our budget reflecting our values, and the thing that's always been something that I've worked on, since the 70s, late 60s, early 70s, is just, justice. And in my different roles as in different capacities, we met, I think I shared this with you, Ifo, that when I was president of the Mexican-American Bar Association, we met with DeVell Patrick. We had he was head of the Civil Rights Division in the AG's office, the U.S. Attorney's Office. We met with him because of the police brutality in Los Angeles and the problems we were having there, not getting anywhere with the the city attorney's office or any other level of enforcement. And we did bring some changes to LAPD, and, fast forward, 30, 40, 50 years, whatever it's been now, there are a lot of problems that still exist. So, and really and being also in the education field, the answer and the question is, how do we eliminate all of these problems? Well, it's slow. It's very slow, because racism and ignorance has become so institutionalized and the only way we can eliminate that is education, and of course identifying the contributing factors such as ACEs, and that's why Cassandra Gandara is one of my heroes, my mother being the other one, where, if we're not taking care of our children and we are creating a society of the forgotten ones, los olvidados y los agachados. So it's important to work. And for example, we have a JPA with Las Cruces Community Schools, and Cassandra and Tessa and I sit on that board. And we can see that there are a lot of changes coming about in our school district for our children, and community schools is the answer. And the question is, of course, is how do we get out of this cycle that I've been a recipient witness to for most of my life, well, more than 2/3 of my life, and yes, a lot of ugly things have happened in our country, and the only way that we can really remedy that is through education. And I think our community schools, especially here in Las Cruces, I mean, attended a big conference that was sponsored by the NEA on community schools, and it was wonderful to see how those communities flourish, and because the children are being taken care of. And as Councilor Vasquez said, there's a park there, and as Councilor Abeda Stuvey has said, a city is judged by its roads and its parks. And those are areas that are so fundamental to how we get around and how we care for our community. But more fundamental than that is focusing on our children and how they need us on so many levels, and the community schools. And I would like to see, I know this is an operating budget, and you said, Ivo, in terms of Councilor or Mayor Pro Tem Gandara saying that we like to see our values reflected in the budget. And because then I thought, that's right. I mean, where does it fit in where we have our fantastic animal service center, which is a JPA with the county, and other services that we have in the city and other. Where does that money come from, Leanne or Mr. Peely, Ifo? How is that reflected in this budget? And I'm just wondering about that. And then, but I think that in areas where this budget does go into our parks and whatnot, and it's right, it's true, there's money there. I think the mayor has said that, Mayor Pro Tem has said that, and you too, Ifo, where there's money that that can be used. And I think that starting with the design, with that $250,000 for Villa Mora, we should get a design or whatever, whatever it's called, planning, to see if where we can begin at least making some roadway and into that. And then a lot of these almost like one of my frustrations is I want it done now type of thing, where we have things planned out and then the only ones that can really have seen the slow wheels of what's it called, progress turn are the mayor and Gil. And they can sit here and say, yeah, we did this back in 2000, whenever. And some of us, I think, for whatever reasons would like, for the very exigent reason that we have a community that has been, there's been a failure of government to really look out for it. And I think it's our duty, our moral obligation to do as much as we can. So I wholeheartedly support moving on Villa Mora Dam. And if money is there, let's do it and get our seat. In the meantime, let's keep Las Cruces beautiful out there. And but we really have to emphasize too and make sure that our money is going to our children. Anything that's related to children, the parks, this whatever, our aquatic center. But Leanne or whoever, where does that money go when we have a JPA? How do we contribute money to the county for certain programs, or where's that money reflected if it's not in the operating budget?
So Mayor, Councilor Flores, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, let me see if I can get to that slide. If this is a better one. Okay, so it is coming out of the general fund, and as I mentioned earlier, our JPAs, because we do have a joint powers agreement with them. It used to be treated as a transfer. So every month the county would just transfer maybe 1/12 to those funds. They do have a fund. I'll use Animal Service Center as an example. their budget is budgeted in the sevens. So we would just move money from general fund 1,000 to their particular fund, which I want to say is 74. Gosh, I don't have them all memorized, and I apologize. But they're in the sevens. This year, they are going to be treated as an expense, but it's no different. We're just giving them money, our share that actually the Animal Service Center board approved, and I think you're on that board. So we're giving them 1.725 million. And so every year we will just put it in there as an expense on us, the city, to them as revenue. So it's like a transfer, but we're showing it as an expense, but we're supporting them by that much.
Okay.
Putting it.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Leanne. I think it'd be wonderful if somehow this was reflected somehow for the public to see. I think that, it's like, it's like showing, not just showing, but definitely sharing with our community, with our residents of the city, what the city does to make it a better world for everybody. And because really the overall thing is quality of life. And I'm not talking about the department, I'm talking about the city. And then that's what our comprehensive plan tries to achieve, and building a city where people are going to be talking to each other, being a community instead of being isolated in little houses or something, or buildings that are built like 10 feet tall or something that have an effect on people's psyche. And that is something that Councilor Vasquez brought up about the psyches, the effect that just looking at something. And it's like, really, with all the problems that we have, and they are problems, you have to call it as you see them, with all our childhood trauma and poverty and all that. I mean, the worst thing a kid can feel is that if he or she is being kicked around and being ignored. So it'd be great if we could release this and have and then, it'd be wonderful, maybe take up 2 pages in the Las Cruces Sun News or somewhere to show, to explain where their tax dollars are going and how they're being spent. And with an emphasis, I would suggest or strongly recommend that that we emphasize it for the well-being of our children. Thank you, Leanne. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Well, thank you. And appreciate it, everyone, our presenters, Leanne and David and Tony and all of you, and the great questions you asked. And so I guess we'll go ahead and just move forward with this and then bring it back. And like I said, if later we need to tap into some of that other monies, and we'll just start doing that. We'll have those work sessions that we talked about scheduled and just kind of move forward. So
Mayor, okay. Real quick, just let you and council know that our next step will be, David and I will be bringing on May 17th the resolution for the budget, sir. So that's the next step for us.
May 17th. Okay, sounds good.
What about the press release, Leanne? Aren't you going to work on that?
I would think, Counselor, that our reporters are probably going to have something in the next day or two talking about this budget. This is a big budget.
It's a huge budget, and it's wonderful that we have money.
Very good. Okay, well, if there's nothing further, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, Beta-Stupi.
Okay, motion made by Counselor Flores, second by Counselor Beta-Stupi. Christine?
This is on the motion to adjourn the work session. Counselor Beta-Stupi?
Yes.
Counselor Vasquez?
Yes.
Counselor Bencomo?
Yes.
Counselor Sork?
Yes.
Counselor Flores,
Yes.
Counselor Gondara,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes. Okay, so we're adjourned at 6:31 PM. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Of course, I'll stick around, Christine, to do the agenda setting meeting, and
Thank you.
we'll talk to you all later. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mayor, whenever you're ready.
Are you ready? Okay. So this is the agenda setting meeting for our May 3rd, 2021 City Council meeting. Number 1, consent.
1 consent,
2, non-consent.
2 non-consent,
3, consent.
3 consent,
4, non-consent.
4 non-consent,
5, non-consent.
5 non-consent,
6, consent.
6 consent,
7, non-consent.
7 non-consent,
8, non-consent.
8 non-consent,
And 9, non-consent.
9 non-consent. Thank you. Have a good
Okay,
night.
thanks. Okay, you too. Night.